The old camp store is useless, Elaine Bell said, and pushed its brass key across Ruth's dining table as if it might leave a grease mark. Take whatever you want before we tear it down. The key stopped beside Mara's paper cup of funeral coffee. Her mother had not offered her anything in 3 years. Not a Christmas card, not a chair at Thanksgiving, not even the blue sweater Mara had left in the hall closet the night Elaine told her that choosing Ruth meant she was no longer choosing this family. Dean leaned against the refrigerator, still wearing his black tie, though he had loosened it enough to expose the pale triangle beneath his throat. We're not tearing it down tomorrow. It blocks the whole entrance, Elaine said. People drive in and see a porch held up by flower pots. One flower pot, Mara said. Elaine looked at her then, a direct look, sharp and startled, as if the furniture had corrected her. Before she could answer, Curtis came in carrying a stack of mail gathered from Ruth's porch. Condolence cards, 2 catalogs, an electric bill, and a Brown County envelope addressed to. Curtis stopped sorting. Dean's tie suddenly seemed too tight again. Elaine reached for the envelope. Mara took it first. No one asked why the county still thought the disowned daughter belonged at the one place her family planned to erase. Outside, car doors thumped and tires crackled down Ruth's gravel drive. The last mourners were leaving with foil-wrapped pieces of pound cake and the relief of people who had fulfilled an unpleasant obligation. Inside, the house smelled of lilies, ham, and coffee that had been cooking since 7 that morning. Mara slid the envelope beneath her coat on the back of her chair. Elaine's eyes followed it. That's probably junk. It has the county seal. They put seals on everything. That's how they make junk look employed. Dean made a small sound that might have been a laugh. He covered it by drinking coffee. It was the sort of line Mara once would have saved to tell Ruth later. Elaine could be funny when she was annoyed, which made it harder to remain properly angry with her. Ruth had been the same way. The women in Mara's family could sharpen a sentence until you admired the blade on its way in. Curtis set the rest of the mail beside the sink. At 62, he still had the square shoulders of the high school fullback he had apparently been for 11 glorious weeks. Today his shoulders sagged inside a suit he wore only for weddings and funerals. "We don't need to settle every detail this afternoon," he said. "We've been waiting 6 months to settle details," Elaine replied. Ruth had been dead for 4 days. Mara stared into her coffee. A skin had formed on top, trembling whenever someone crossed the kitchen. She had slept 2 hours after closing the diner, showered in the bathroom down the hall from her rented room, then driven 90 miles in the truck Ruth had given her years ago. She had spent most of the funeral standing near a fake ficus in the chapel lobby because every cluster of relatives seemed to tighten when she approached. Aunt Loretta had hugged her with both arms and whispered, "I'm staying out of it," while holding on long enough to suggest she desperately wanted Mara to ask what it was. Mara hadn't. The estate attorney had left 20 minutes ago after explaining, in a voice trained to survive family rooms, that Bellwether Campground passed according to Ruth's existing will. The cabins, RV sites, bathhouse, maintenance barn, and Ruth's house went to Elaine, Ruth's only child. Curtis's name would be added where appropriate. Dean would oversee operations. Mara received the truck she already drove and personal effects to be selected by the family. That last phrase had produced the cardboard box now sitting at her feet. Elaine nodded toward it. "I put in the things I thought you'd care about." On top lay 3 of Ruth's aprons, washed and folded. The yellow one had tiny strawberries. The denim one had a scorch mark near the pocket. From the afternoon Ruth leaned against a hot griddle and blamed the stove for sneaking up on her. Mara picked up the denim apron and felt something hard inside its pocket. For one ridiculous second, she imagined another key, a note, some last private message. It was a roll of peppermint candy with 2 pieces left. Her throat tightened anyway. "There are recipe cards underneath," Elaine said, though most of them say things like, "some flour." That was a measurement to her. It was a philosophy. Again, nearly funny. Mara lowered the apron into the box. Beneath the recipes were Ruth's red plastic flashlight, a chipped ceramic loon, 2 decks of playing cards, and the wooden open sign from the camp store. Its string had broken, and someone had looped it around the loon's neck. Dean bent to examine the box. "You got the good cards." Grandma marked the queens in the blue deck. She did not. She absolutely did. Little pencil dots in the corners. That was probably coffee. She never drank coffee at the card table. Ruth had never admitted to cheating either, but she had won $17 from Mara and Dean one rainy August and bought them lunch with their own money. The memory arrived complete, Ruth slapping down a queen, Dean yelling fraud, rain rattling on the store's metal awning. Mara felt Dean remembering it too. For a moment his face was open and young. Then Elaine said, "The things from the store need to be cleared out before the contractor comes." The moment closed. "What contractor?" Mara asked. "We're getting estimates. For tearing it down?" "For everything," Curtis said quickly. "Deck repairs, cabin roofs. We're looking at all our options." Elaine tucked a strand of silver blonde hair behind her ear. Even after the graveside wind, her hair looked intentional. Guests make a decision in the first 30 seconds. Right now, the first thing they see is that shack. They also see the lake. After the shack, the store sold ice and bait. Nobody expected Versailles. No one expects Versailles in Ohio, Mara. Dean looked down into his cup. Mara rested one hand on the box. "It was open last summer." "Barely," Elaine said. "Mother sat in there 6 days a week to sell $30 worth of worms. You encouraged it because it gave you an excuse to keep her working." The room changed temperature. Curtis said her name softly. "Elaine?" "What?" "We're all thinking it." "I wasn't," Dean said. Elaine glanced at him, betrayed. Mara could have answered. She had whole speeches stored for this, polished during long diner shifts while she filled syrup bottles and watched truck headlights move across the windows. Ruth had refused to stop working because work was how she recognized herself. Mara had reduced the store's hours. She had carried every heavy box. She had driven Ruth to appointments, filled her pill organizer, and learned how to make the soup Ruth would eat on nauseated days. None of it mattered in this kitchen. Facts had been tried here before. Mara stood and pulled on her coat. Curtis stepped between her and the back door without quite meaning to. "Don't go mad. I'm not mad." "That's your mad voice," Dean said. "No, my mad voice has verbs." His mouth twitched. Elaine's did not. Mara lifted the box. The bottom bowed immediately. Dean caught it before the loon fell through. "Here, I'll get another box. I have it. You visibly do not." He found a reusable grocery bag beneath the counter and transferred the heavier objects. He handled Ruth's recipe cards carefully, keeping the rubber band from slipping. That annoyed Mara more than if he had dumped everything in. She wanted him simple: cruel brother, loyal son, thief of the inheritance. Instead, he was a man who knew the marked cards went beneath the aprons so they would not bend. At the door, Curtis touched Mara's sleeve. "You'll come back before you drive home?" "This was me coming back. I mean to the house." She looked past him at Ruth's calendar still hanging beside the pantry. The current month showed 2 dentist appointments, a fuel delivery, and the words "Mara birthday" written inside a red heart. Ruth had drawn the heart before she went into the hospital. "I'll see," Mara said. She put the box behind the passenger seat of her truck and sat behind the wheel without starting it. Through the kitchen window, Elaine gathered cups while Curtis talked with both hands. Dean stood at the sink, staring out toward the bare maples. Mara took the county envelope from beneath her coat. The paper inside had been folded twice. She read it once, then again, more slowly. Annual concession, lease notice. The county requested proof of liability insurance, the yearly lease fee, and confirmation that public operations would resume no later than the Friday before Memorial Day. Failure to reopen could result in termination for non-use. Under leaseholder, it said Mara Evelyn Bell. She lowered the page. Years earlier, Ruth had insisted Mara sign documents after an argument about the store's insurance. Mara remembered a notary at the bank, Ruth complaining about having to pay $7 for a stamp, and herself, signing wherever Ruth tapped her purple fingernail. Elaine had discovered the arrangement soon afterward and called it manipulation. Mara had assumed that anything connected to the store ended when Ruth closed for the winter. Apparently, the county had not assumed the same thing. Her phone showed 12% battery and 3 missed calls from the diner. She ignored the calls and dialed the number printed at the top of the notice. A recorded voice informed her that county offices were closed on Sundays. "Of course they are," Mara whispered. She looked toward County Road 16. Through the leafless trees, she could see a slice of the old store's roof beyond Ruth's property. One side dipped visibly. The red camp supplies sign had lost its final S. Even from here, the place looked tired. Useless, Elaine had called it. Mara set the notice on the passenger seat and started the truck. The campground entrance was less than half a mile away, but she drove slowly. At the bend, the lake flashed pewter through the trees. The cabin stood in two neat rows along the far slope, their shutters closed for winter. Ruth's store waited alone beside the road, exactly where it had waited for almost 50 years. Mara parked in the gravel and carried the brass key to the porch. One of the flower pots still supported the lowest step. She put her weight on it carefully, climbed up, and fitted the key into the lock. It resisted at first. Mara lifted the door by its handle the way Ruth had taught her. The lock turned. When she pushed the door open, the old brass bell rang above her head, bright and indignant in the dark. Dust moved through the doorway in a pale sheet, turning lazily in the cold air. Mara stood with one hand on the door and waited for the smell to reach her. Cedar, mouse droppings, old coffee, rubber worms. Home. If home had been locked since October and had something dead behind the refrigerator. She stepped inside. The front windows were covered by plywood shutters, so the only light came through the open door and the narrow panes above it. Shelves rose in shadow on both sides. The wire display rack by the register still held 6 bags of marshmallows fused into white bricks. A handwritten sign on the cooler said, "Ice is cold." Ruth had added usually beneath it after the compressor began making a noise like a spoon in a garbage disposal. Mara set the brass key on the counter and ran her finger through the dust. 7 years, she said to no one. The store answered with a tap inside the wall. She froze. Another tap, then a scratch. "Your lease is not included." She took Ruth's red flashlight from the box and tested it. The beam came on weak and orange. Ruth never threw out batteries. She simply moved tired ones into less important devices until they completed their natural lives. Mara smacked the flashlight against her palm, and the beam brightened enough to reveal the aisle. Nothing moved. The store had always looked smaller in winter. During summer, the doors stayed open, coolers hummed, and people filled the narrow spaces with damp towels, fishing poles, and urgent questions about charcoal. Now the shelves seemed to lean toward one another, as if sharing bad news. Mara walked behind the counter. Ruth's stool stood where she had left it, its vinyl seat repaired with gray duct tape. Beside the register sat a mug printed with "World's Okayest Grandma." Mara picked it up. A hard brown crescent of coffee clung to the bottom. She carried the mug to the little sink and turned the faucet. The handle squealed, but no water came. Good start. A metal cash box waited beneath the counter. It was unlocked and empty except for 3 pennies, a Canadian dime, and a note in Ruth's blocky handwriting. "Frank says he paid for propane." He did not. Mara laughed before she could stop herself. The sound went into the dark store and came back too quickly. She folded the note and slipped it into the pocket of the denim apron. Then she caught herself. That was how it began with Ruth. Every receipt had a story. Every broken object deserved one more season. Every drawer became an archive. Mara put the note back in the cash box. She found the breaker panel in the rear stockroom. The main switch was off. A yellow service tag hung from the handle, dated 2 weeks after the store's closing. Mara turned it on. Nothing happened. She tried a light switch anyway. Once, twice. Excellent. The stockroom was worse than the front. Cardboard boxes had softened in a roof leak and collapsed into one another. Russ spotted the propane cage visible through the back window. A deep crack ran diagonally across the concrete floor. The employee bathroom door would open only 6 inches before striking something heavy on the other side. Mara pushed harder. An aluminum mop bucket rolled out, followed by a stack of old license plates and one of Ruth's orthopedic shoes. Only one. Mara stared down at it. "You kept a spare foot back here?" She picked up the shoe and placed it on a shelf. Her hand lingered over the flattened heel. The last summer Mara worked at Bellwether, Ruth had begun wearing slippers to the store because her feet swelled by noon. Elaine saw her behind the counter one Saturday and lost her temper in front of 3 customers. She accused Mara of treating Ruth like free labor. Ruth threw a roll of paper towels at her daughter and told her she was welcome to relieve the free labor any time before 6 the following morning. Elaine never came at 6. Neither had Mara the next day. She had come at 5:30. Something moved behind her. Mara spun, raising the flashlight like a club. A small gray body shot across the stockroom, ran over the toe of her boot, and disappeared beneath a pallet. She screamed. The brass bell above the front door rang violently as somebody entered. Mara! She pressed one hand to her chest. If you're here to kill me, wait 30 seconds. Ray Alvarez appeared in the stockroom doorway, holding a foil-covered casserole dish. His black suit jacket was unbuttoned, and rain had darkened the shoulders. He had changed out of his funeral shoes and into work boots, but was still wearing a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled unevenly. What happened? A mouse. He looked at the flashlight raised over her head. Did it have a weapon? It had intent. Ray set the casserole on a box and peered beneath the pallet, probably running home to describe the giant it saw. It ran over my foot. Then you've been claimed. That's how mouse law works. Mara lowered the flashlight. She had not seen Ray since the previous spring, when he replaced a faulty outlet in Ruth's kitchen and refused to send a bill. Before that, he had been part of nearly every summer she remembered. First as a college student hauling firewood and pumping propane. Later, as the electrician bellwether called, because he knew where Ruth had hidden the shutoff switches. He had been at the funeral, standing near the back. Mara had seen him speaking to Curtis after the service, and deliberately looked elsewhere. Ray nodded toward the casserole. Loretta made me bring that over. Apparently it's enchiladas. Apparently? She said, enchiladas. The pan weighs 12 pounds. That could still be enchiladas. It could be a roof tile. Mara stepped around him and returned to the front. Ray followed, pausing when he saw the county notice on the counter. You opened it. You knew about it? I knew Ruth had one coming every winter. I didn't know whose name was on it. Mara studied him. Ray had the same steady face he had always had, broad through the cheeks, with dark eyebrows that made even harmless statements sound carefully considered. There were silver threads at his temples now. Not many. Enough to annoy her because she remembered him at 19 with hair down to his shoulders and a tattoo he had hidden from his mother for an entire summer. It's my name, she said. I gathered that from the part where it says your name. The lease is still active. Ray looked around the dark store. That seems like the optimistic word. She handed him the notice. He read it without commenting, one thumb resting on the fold. When he finished, he set it down exactly where it had been. Memorial Day, he said. 11 weeks. You have insurance? I have car insurance. The store will be comforted. Electricity? He pointed toward the ceiling. The campground disconnected the feeder in November. Why? Ruth wasn't coming back for winter, and the line from the maintenance barn was older than both of us put together. Curtis asked me to isolate it after she went into the hospital. So, they control the power. They own the pole the old feeder runs from. He rubbed his chin. The lease parcel has its own service point by the road. Never used because Ruth hated paying 2 base charges. Mara followed his gaze toward the front window, though the plywood blocked the view. Could it be connected? Anything can be connected if you dislike money. How much? That depends on what the panel looks like when it isn't trying to hide in the dark. I can pay you to look. Good. I've always wanted 4 Canadian dollars and a mug with a dead fly in it. She glanced at the okayest grandma mug. There was, in fact, something with wings stuck to the coffee crescent. I have a job, 90 miles from here. You've been keeping track. Ruth mentioned it. Ruth had mentioned everything, usually more than once. Mara could not decide whether that made the store feel less lonely or more invaded. Ray removed his jacket and draped it over Ruth's stool. Where's the panel? You're still wearing funeral clothes. So are you. I'm not crawling into walls. You threatened a mouse with a flashlight. He started it. Ray took the flashlight from her and went into the stockroom. Mara stood behind the counter, listening as he opened the metal panel and made small, disapproving sounds. Those sounds had been part of Bellwether's summers, too. Ray disapproved of extension cords, overloaded outlets, and Ruth's belief that the smell of hot plastic meant an appliance was working hard. What's the verdict? Mara called. I'm developing new respect for fire. Can it be fixed? A pause. Yes. That one word reached farther into her than it should have. Ray returned carrying a ledger covered in green cloth. This was sitting on top of the panel. Of course it was. You don't keep financial records on electrical equipment? I was raised badly. She took the ledger and opened it. Ruth's handwriting filled the pages in blue ink, dates, supplier names, sales totals, propane deliveries, and lists of people who owed money. Some entries had been crossed out, many had not. Mara turned to the last completed month. The numbers were worse than she expected. Gross sales looked respectable until she subtracted inventory, utilities, lease fees, card processing charges, and the wages Ruth insisted on paying Mara, even when Mara tried to refuse them. The store had lost money in July, their busiest month. Ray watched her face. Bad? It was always bad. That bad? Worse. He leaned against the counter, but did not ask to see. Ruth gave a lot away. She also stocked 6 kinds of canned chili. 5 were necessary. No kind is necessary. You've become fancy at the diner. I serve gravy from a bag. Exactly. Mara closed the ledger. My mother was right. Ray's expression changed slightly. About which part? The store. It didn't support itself. That isn't the same as useless. That sounds nice, but the county does not accept nice as a lease fee. No, they're very traditional that way. She slid the ledger across the counter and stared at the dull rectangle where it had rested in the dust. Even that clean patch seemed accusatory. Ruth had worked sick, tired, and in pain to keep open a business that lost money while her daughter begged her to close it. Mara had defended her, more than defended her. She had signed the lease. Ray picked at a loose corner of countertop laminate. You don't have to reopen it, I know. If you want your things out, I can help. My things? The store things, the boxes, whatever matters. Elaine already decided none of it matters. I didn't ask Elaine. Mara turned toward the front windows. I should go back. I'm scheduled at 5 tomorrow. Ray glanced at his watch. If you leave in the next hour, you'll get 4 hours of sleep. My room is paid through Friday. That is the saddest argument I've heard this week, and I attended a funeral. She gave him a look. Stay at my place, he said, then raised both hands. Guest room, clean sheets, door with a lock. My mother still lives next door and can supervise our reputations. Your mother never liked me. My mother likes 9 people. I'm ranked 7th. Mara almost smiled. I'm going home. To the rented room. To where I live. Ray nodded once. He knew when to stop. It was one of the things she remembered liking about him, and one of the reasons she had avoided him after the service. He retrieved his jacket and lifted the casserole. You want this? Is it mine? Loretta said, to leave it for whoever looked hungriest. That's insulting. You screamed at a mouse. You look vulnerable. She took the pan. Ray stepped onto the porch, then looked back at the threshold. Lift the door when you lock it. I remember, I know. After his truck disappeared around the bend, Mara stood alone in the open doorway. The afternoon had gone gray. Cold rain ticked against the awning and darkened the gravel. Across the road, the campground sign showed Ruth's painted loon flying over a blue lake. Bellwether, it said. Opening, Memorial Day weekend. The same deadline as the lease. Mara locked the store and carried the casserole to her truck. She set it on top of the box, beside Ruth's aprons and the wooden open sign. The county notice lay on the passenger seat, weighted by the green ledger. Her phone rang before she could start the engine. Elaine. Mara let it ring 4 times, then answered. What? Are you at the store? Mara looked toward Ruth's house through the trees. The kitchen window was too far away to see clearly. Did you put a tracking device in the loon? Dean saw your truck. Then why didn't you ask Dean? Elaine exhaled. That county letter. What was it? Junk with a seal. Mara. She ran her thumb along the edge of the ledger. The operating lease is active, she said. It still names me. Silence came down the line, deep enough that Mara could hear dishes being moved in Ruth's kitchen. Then Elaine said, very quietly, Your grandmother told me she canceled that. Mara looked at the brass key in her palm. She didn't, she said. Elaine did not answer immediately. Rain ticked against the truck's windshield. A drop found its way through the cracked weather seal above Mara's door and landed on her knee. Mother told me she'd ended it last fall, Elaine said. Why would she tell you that? Because we discussed the property. The store isn't on her property. I know where it is. Then you know you can't tear it down. Elaine's breath changed, not a sigh. More like someone carefully setting down a glass before they threw it. No one is trying to take something from you, Mara. You handed me a key and told me to empty the building before you demolished it, because I did not know your name was still attached to it. That is generally how taking something from a person works. Do you even want that store? Mara looked through the windshield at the low roof, the dark windows, the porch step balanced on a flower pot. Want felt like the wrong word for anything that smelled of mice and came with a ledger full of red numbers. That's not the question. It is exactly the question. You have a job. You live an hour and a half away. You cannot simply appear after 3 years and plant a flag because you found a piece of paper with your name on it. I didn't appear. I was invited to a funeral. Don't do that. Do what? Turn every sentence into evidence that we're terrible. Mara closed her eyes. For 3 years she had imagined Elaine calling. In some versions, her mother apologized. In others, Mara delivered such a precise account of the damage done that Elaine finally understood it. She had never imagined they would spend the call arguing about zoning-adjacent paperwork while enchiladas cooled behind the passenger seat. Did Grandma tell you she canceled it before or after she went into the hospital? Mara asked. After. When? October, maybe early November. Ruth had entered the hospital on October 26th. The store's electric service had been disconnected 2 weeks after it closed. The lease notice looked automatic. It proved only that no cancellation had reached the county. Was it in writing? I don't know. I wasn't interrogating my dying mother. There it was. Elaine could place a body between herself and any question. Mara opened her eyes. I'll call the county tomorrow. And then? I don't know. You should let us handle it. Why? Because we're already handling the campground. One neglected parcel at the entrance affects all of it. So first it was useless. Now it affects everything. Mara, please. The word was so unexpected that Mara nearly missed what followed. Don't make Mother's last mistake into a war. The call ended. Mara kept the phone against her ear until the screen went black. She knew Elaine would tell Curtis that Mara had hung up on her. By dinner, Dean would remember it that way too. Families did not need a conspiracy when they had repetition. She placed the brass key in the cup holder and started the truck. The rain followed her south. It sharpened under the highway lights, silver lines flying at the windshield, while the wipers dragged a greasy half-moon across her view. The casserole shifted every time she braked. Near Columbus, the foil tore, and the truck filled with the smell of roasted peppers and cheese. It was enchiladas after all. Mara pulled into a gas station, bought a plastic fork, and ate 2 standing beneath the awning. Trucks hissed through wet pavement beyond the pumps. Her black funeral dress clung coldly to her calves, and the county notice softened under her damp fingers while she read it again. A man filling a work van glanced over. Those any good? They're emotionally complicated. He nodded as if that answered him. Her rented room was on the 2nd floor of a converted house behind a tire shop. The front steps tilted left. The washing machine accepted quarters but rarely completed a spin cycle, and the landlord had installed a framed print of a Tuscan vineyard in every room. Mara had never been to Tuscany. She was beginning to resent it. She carried Ruth's box upstairs, leaving the casserole and green ledger in the truck because she did not have enough hands. Halfway back down, her phone rang again. This time it was Dean. She answered without greeting. You told Mom she can't tear down the store. That's true. You don't know that yet. My name is on the lease. Your name was on the lease when Grandma was alive. That doesn't necessarily mean the notice is addressed to me and asks whether I'm reopening. Dean was quiet. Behind him, Mara heard the television in Ruth's living room. Curtis was watching a basketball game, apparently. The announcer's excitement rose and fell beneath their silence. What do you want to do? Dean asked. I don't know why everyone keeps asking me that, 5 minutes after I find out I have 7 years of responsibility for a condemned tackle box. It's not condemned, thank you. That's one point in its favor. I'm not trying to fight. Then this family has become very bad at its favorite hobby. Dean exhaled through his nose. I'm supposed to meet the cabin contractor Tuesday. Mom wants to show him the entrance. Tell him not to measure for a wrecking ball. Contractors don't use wrecking balls. Then he sounds perfect. Mara. She stopped on the bottom step. Rainwater dripped from the eaves into a metal bucket the landlord had placed beside the porch. Did Grandma really tell Mom she canceled the lease? I wasn't there. That's not what I asked. I don't know what Grandma told her. Mara could picture him rubbing his forehead. He had done that since college whenever 2 people demanded different answers from him. I found the last ledger, she said. The store lost money. Yeah. The certainty of it irritated her. You knew? I helped Grandma put together tax stuff in August. August? She didn't say anything. Maybe she didn't want you worrying. She discussed your work with me all the time. I know. Something sat inside those 2 words that Mara could not see around. Dean lowered his voice. Just talk to the county before you decide anything, and don't sign with some stranger who's going to turn it into a vape shop. Who do you think I know? You work nights near a highway. Your social circle is a mystery to me. I work breakfast. Then your mornings are a mystery to me. He almost sounded like himself. That was the dangerous thing about Dean. He could stand beside Elaine while she cut Mara out of the family, then call 3 years later and make one stupid joke that fit perfectly into an old space. I have to sleep, Mara said. Okay. Neither of them hung up. Finally, Dean said, Grandma wanted me to give you something. Mara's hand tightened around the phone. What? I don't know. She said it in the hospital. Make sure Mara gets her things. I assume she meant the box. Did she say things or thing? I don't remember. You remembered enough to bring it up now. I was trying to tell you the box wasn't Mom's idea. The bucket beside the porch gave a hollow ping as another drop struck it. What else did she say? Mara asked. Nothing useful. She was on pain medication. She asked me to put the cat out, and she hadn't had a cat since 2009. Mara swallowed. Good night, Dean. She ended the call before he could do it first. At 4:30 the next morning, the diner's kitchen smelled of bacon grease and industrial lemon cleaner. Mara tied on her brown apron, stacked mugs along the pass-through, and tried to forget the way Ruth's denim apron had felt in her hands. Joni, the night waitress, slid a plate of toast beneath the heat lamp. She was 54, twice divorced, and able to identify every regular customer's vehicle by the sound it made turning into the lot. You look haunted, Joni said. I went to a funeral. That'll do it. My grandmother. Joni's face softened. Oh, honey, don't hug me. I'm holding syrup. I wasn't going to hug you. I've seen how you respond to kindness. The first customers arrived before 5. Mara poured coffee, delivered eggs, apologized for hash browns, and carried on 3 conversations about the rain. Ordinary work pressed around her in a way grief had not managed to penetrate. A trucker wanted hot sauce. A nurse finishing an overnight shift asked for her toast nearly burned. The register drawer jammed twice. Everything required an answer small enough to give. At 9, Mara took her break in the dry storage closet and called the county. A woman named Sandra asked for the lease number, then placed Mara on hold beneath a trumpet version of Blue Moon. Mara watched a box of powdered gravy while she waited. Sandra returned. Yes, Ms. Bell. The concession lease remains active through October 31st, 7 years from now. No cancellation. Nothing is recorded here. Can someone else cancel it without me? Not if you're the named leaseholder. Mara leaned against a shelf. What exactly am I leasing? The parcel, the existing concession structure, and the right to operate approved public services from that location. Food, camping supplies, firewood, bait, equipment rental within the listed limitations. I can email the full copy. What happens if I don't reopen? After the non-use period, the county may terminate and put the concession out for bid. There was no triumph in Sandra's voice. She sounded like a woman describing recycling collection. How much do I owe? Sandra named a figure that was almost 3 weeks of Mara's pay. And insurance? Required before reopening. You'll also need the annual health and safety inspections if you sell prepared food. Mara looked at the handwritten schedule Joni had taped inside the closet door. She had 6 shifts that week. Rent due Friday. Truck insurance in 12 days. $183 in checking, unless the gas station charge had cleared. Is there an extension? The reopening date is already the end of the non-use allowance. Of course it is. Sandra hesitated. Would you like me to note that you intend to surrender the lease? No. The answer came before Mara had decided to give it. She straightened. No, don't note anything yet. After the call, she stood in the closet with the phone pressed to her chest. Through the wall came the clatter of plates and Joni shouting that Table 6 needed a clean fork sometime during its natural lifetime. Mara opened the email Sandra had sent. The lease filled 23 pages. She skipped the legal language and found the signature page. Ruth Bell's name had been crossed out beside a dated amendment. Beneath it, in blue ink, was Mara Evelyn Bell. Not temporary, not assistant, sole operator. Ruth's purple fingernail tapped in Mara's memory. Sign there and there. Don't squint at it, honey. It won't improve. Mara returned to the dining room and worked until 1. When her shift ended, she sat in the truck with the green ledger open over the steering wheel and made 2 columns on the back of a guest check. On the left, she wrote, what it needs: power, water, roof, insurance, lease fee, inventory, inspections, pest control, sanity. On the right, she wrote, "What I have, a key." She stared at the second column, then added, 11 weeks. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ray. "Found a replacement service panel in my shop. Ugly but legal. Want me to price the rest?" Mara read it twice. Then she moved the county notice off the passenger seat, picked up Ruth's wooden open sign, and laid it across the ledger. "Yes," she typed. "Price everything." Ray's reply arrived before she had finished buckling her seatbelt. "That sentence has ruined better people than you." A second message followed. "Saturday, 8 a.m. Bring clothes you hate." Mara looked down at her funeral dress, still crumpled in a grocery bag behind the seat. "I'm overqualified," she wrote. The rest of the week divided itself into things that paid 20% tips and things that might consume every dollar she had. She worked 2 double shifts, accepted a Friday closing shift Joni had been trying to escape, and spent her breaks calling insurance agents who reacted to the phrase 50-year-old camp store as if she were trying to insure a carnival ride. One quoted a premium larger than the yearly lease fee. Another asked whether there were fuel tanks on the premises. "Propane exchange cage," Mara said. "Any cooking equipment? A coffee maker? Commercial? It has made coffee for the public against their will." The agent did not laugh. By Friday, Mara had a folder of estimates, none of them friendly, and a headache behind her right eye that pulsed whenever someone ordered decaf after noon. She left the diner after 9 that night. Joni stood in the rear doorway smoking beneath the no smoking sign, while Mara loaded the truck. "You're driving up there now?" Joni asked. "If I wait until morning, I'll sleep through morning. That's what morning is for." Mara shut the tailgate. "I need to meet an electrician. At 8? He likes to punish people. Is he attractive? He's licensed." "That wasn't my question." Mara opened the driver's door. Joni blew smoke toward the rain gutter. "You quitting?" "No, you're thinking loud. I can't quit. I have a lease fee, insurance, and apparently electrical wiring from the Truman administration." "Good. Because if you leave me with Dale on Sundays, I'll report you missing." Dale, the weekend manager, referred to napkins as table linen and had once organized the creamers by expiration date during a lunch rush. "I'm not leaving," Mara said. Joni studied her through the smoke. "People say that right before they do." The roads were clear, but exhaustion made the dark feel thick. Mara rolled down the window, sang badly with the radio, and bought coffee so strong it tasted burned even by her standards. She reached Bellwether after midnight. Ruth's house was dark except for the porch light. Dean's truck sat beside the garage, and a blue recycling bin leaned against one tire. Mara drove past without stopping. The camp store emerged in her headlights. Behind it, half hidden by bare sumac and the propane cage, sat Ruth's old travel trailer. Mara had forgotten the exact shade of it. Beige had surrendered years ago and become the color of wet cardboard. A green stripe ran down the side, interrupted by patches of white sealant. Ruth had bought it after Curtis banned her from sleeping in the store during holiday weekends. She had responded by placing the trailer 12 feet behind it. Mara parked beside the porch and approached with her flashlight. The trailer door was locked. She tried the store key without success. "Fine," she told it. "Maintain your dignity." She reclined the truck seat and used Ruth's denim apron as a pillow. The peppermint roll in its pocket pressed against her cheek until she removed it. She ate one piece and saved the last. At 7:50, knuckles rapped against the driver's window. Mara jerked awake and hit the horn. Ray jumped back. "Good morning to you, too." She lowered the window. Cold air poured in. "You could have called?" "I did. Your phone is lighting up under your foot." She found it beside the brake pedal. "What time is it? Late enough for you to deny sleeping in your truck." "I was resting my eyes. For 7 hours." He held up 2 coffees and a paper bag darkened with grease. He wore work pants, a navy jacket, and the expression of someone who had been awake long enough to enjoy another person's suffering. Mara opened the door. "If you tell anyone I slept here, I'll describe your tattoo to your mother. My mother has seen the tattoo." "Did she like it?" She prayed at it. Ray handed her coffee. It was lightened with exactly 1 spoonful of sugar. Mara did not comment on the fact that he remembered. They ate egg sandwiches on the store porch while the sun came through the trees. Across the road, Bellwether's cabins looked peaceful from a distance. Up close, 2 had tarps over their roofs, and one porch listed enough to make the railings seem drunk. A pickup with a magnetic sign for Barlow Construction drove into the campground. Your family's getting estimates, Ray said. They keep saying that as if estimates repair things. Estimates mostly repair optimism. He unlocked his van and began carrying tools inside. Mara opened the shutters one by one. Morning light exposed every cobweb, stain, and curling price sticker. The store looked worse illuminated, but it also looked smaller, finite. A mess with 4 walls. Ray tested outlets while Mara pulled expired food from shelves. 7 trash bags filled quickly. She found canned chili dated 6 years earlier and held it up. Still necessary? Ray glanced over. That one has become historical. She emptied the cooler, scrubbed the coffee station, and dragged mouse-chewed cardboard toward the door. Under the bottom shelf, she found a dried minnow, 2 quarters, and a pair of reading glasses that belonged to neither her nor Ruth. By 10, Ray had opened the service panel, removed 2 scorch breakers, and said, so many times Mara threatened to charge him by the syllable. He finally spread 3 pages on the counter. Bare minimum, he said. New service from the county-side connection, replacement panel, grounded outlets around the sink and cooler, emergency lights, inspection. Mara looked at the number at the bottom. That isn't bare. That's dressed like bare, yes. You said you had a used panel. I took that off. She sat on Ruth's stool. The vinyl released a tired wheeze beneath her. And the rest? Waterline needs pressure testing. The roof leak is probably flashing, unless the decking's gone. Cooler might live if we clean the compressor. Propane cage needs new hinges and a lock. Bathroom has to be functional. Rough total. I don't price plumbing and roofing. Ray. He named a range. Mara laughed once. Okay, that's not the sound people make when something is okay. I have $149 in checking. He leaned both hands on the counter. I get paid Wednesday, she added. That fixes everything. Don't. I'm not doing anything. You're making your concerned face. This is my regular face. No, your regular face is more judgmental. Ray folded the pages. You have 11 weeks. You don't need a stock store tomorrow. You need a building that can pass inspection and enough cash left to open the door. I need the lease fee first. How much? She told him. That's unfriendly. The county is traditional. Voices sounded outside. Elaine came up the porch steps, followed by Curtis, Dean, and a man in a tan Barlow construction jacket. Elaine wore jeans, leather boots, and Ruth's green barn coat. Mara stared at the coat. One cuff was still mended with blue thread where Mara had repaired it 2 winters ago. Elaine noticed. It was in the mudroom, she said. I didn't ask. You were looking. Curtis gave Mara a careful smile. Morning? Dean held up a key on a square plastic tag. Trailer. Mara took it. How did you know I needed this? I saw you sleeping in the truck. I was resting. Ray coughed into his fist. The contractor shifted his clipboard. You must be Mara, Mason Barlow. He offered his hand. She shook it because refusing would have required more energy. Elaine gestured toward the store. I told Mason we'd have to revise the entrance concept. Since you can't demolish my building, since the lease situation needs clarification. It was clarified by 1 phone call and 23 pages. Mason looked toward the campground with the calm of a man mentally increasing his estimate. Curtis stepped inside and surveyed the trash bags. You've done a lot. I threw away food old enough to vote. Dean picked up Ray's electrical estimate. Mara took it from him. Private, she said. I was trying to see if we could coordinate service work. Why? The campground needs upgrades too. If a crew's trenching, I already have a service point on the county side. Dean looked at Ray, who nodded. Elaine's jaw tightened. There's no reason to duplicate everything. The store has always depended on Bellwether's power and water. And you disconnected the power. Because it was unsafe, which is why I'm fixing it. With what money? Curtis said. Elaine? No, it's a practical question. She turned back to Mara. The fee, insurance, inventory, repairs. You have no capital and no experience operating a business alone. I ran this place for 3 summers. You helped your grandmother. Mara felt the words exactly where Elaine intended them to land. Ray gathered his tools. I'm going to check the outside meter. Mason immediately said, I'll take a look. The 2 men left with professional speed. Dean started after them, but Curtis touched his shoulder. Elaine reached into Ruth's coat and removed a folded check. We're willing to pay for an assignment of the lease, she said. Mara did not take it. How willing? $5,000. The amount would cover almost 3 months of rent, her truck insurance, and the medical bill she had been paying in $50 pieces since winter. It would leave enough to replace the 2 tires, currently one hard rain away from becoming philosophy. Curtis watched her without blinking. Dean stared at the floor. "And what happens to the store?" Mara asked. Elaine looked toward the bright front windows. "That wouldn't be your responsibility anymore. You tear it down. We improve the entrance." Mara took the check. The paper was warm from Ruth's coat. $5,000, already written to Mara Evelyn Bell. Elaine had expected her to be here, expected the number to work. Mara folded the check once. Elaine's shoulders loosened. Then Mara tore it through the signature. Curtis flinched. Dean closed his eyes. Mara tore it again and placed the 4 pieces on the counter. "I don't know if I can save this place," she said, "but you don't get to make that decision because you brought the right coat and guessed what I cost." Elaine's face emptied. For 1 second, Mara wished she could take it back. Not the refusal, only the accuracy. Her mother gathered the pieces carefully. "You always did prefer a performance." She walked out. Curtis followed after a murmured, "We'll talk later." Dean remained beside the counter, the trailer key tag swinging from Mara's hand between them. "That was stupid," he said. "I know. $5,000 is a lot of money, I know." He looked around the stripped shelves. "Do you even have a plan?" "No? Great. But I have a list." Dean rubbed his forehead. "Of course you do." Mara handed him a trash bag. He stared at it. "If you're staying," she said, "the historical chili goes in the dumpster." For a moment she expected him to leave. Instead, Dean took the bag, loosened his jacket, and started with the canned goods. Dean held the bag open while Mara dropped in cans one by one. "Beef and bean," she said. "Keep. Expired in 2018, vintage, turkey chili, trash." "Why?" "Turkey has no business in chili. This one expired later. That doesn't change its character." They worked down the shelf that way, their voices flat with the effort of pretending nothing important had just happened. Dean rejected vegetarian chili on ideological grounds, then quietly rescued 3 jars of pickles whose dates were still good. Mara found Ruth's price gun and labeled his jacket $2.49. He looked at the orange sticker on his chest. "That's low. It's a clearance event. You used to charge more for bait. Bait served a purpose." He pulled the sticker off and pressed it to her forehead. For half a second, they were 20 and 23, closing the store after a July shift, hungry enough to eat ice cream sandwiches they had dropped on the floor. Then Dean reached for another can, and the years returned. Outside, Mason and Ray stood near the old service post, taking turns pointing at the ground. Curtis watched them with both hands in his coat pockets. Elaine was gone. "Is Mom at the house?" Mara asked. Dean flattened a box. "She drove into town. To do what? Be furious somewhere with better lighting?" Mara put the last can into the bag. "Does she know you're helping? I'm carrying trash, not changing sides. Good distinction. It matters. To you. To everybody except you, apparently." Dean tied the bag too hard, tearing the plastic near the top. A can rolled out and struck the floor. They both watched it spin beneath the candy rack. "You think I should have taken the check?" Mara said. "I think you have bad tires and a medical collection letter in the glove compartment." She looked at him. "I saw it when I moved your funeral box. You read my mail? It was an envelope with red printing large enough to guide aircraft. It's not in collections. Yet. That changes everything." Dean crouched to retrieve the can. $5,000 would help. Help me disappear more conveniently. That's not what they're trying to do. What do you call paying me to surrender the only thing here with my name on it? I call it Mom wanting the entrance to look less like a place where people vanish. She grew up in this store. Exactly. He stood, holding the can against his palm. You remember Grandma at the counter. Mom remembers sleeping in a chair in the stockroom because Grandma couldn't find anyone to cover a shift. Mara took the can from him. Mom was 34 when I was born, she said. She hadn't slept in that chair for years. You think people stop being angry when the thing ends? No. Apparently they save it for the next generation. Dean looked toward the door. Curtis was walking back to the campground with Mason. Ray remained by the road, writing on a pad braced against his van. Mom hated this place before your name went on the lease, Dean said. That's what you never understood. I understood. She told me every day. No, you thought she hated it because it was failing. She hated it when it did well too. Mara rested the canned chili on the counter. Why are you telling me this now? Because you tore up $5,000 to prove she couldn't tell you what to do. I refuse $5,000 because she wouldn't tell me what she planned to do. Same family, different wording. He carried the bag toward the door. Dean. He stopped. Why did Grandma have you doing the taxes in August? He kept his back to her. Because she didn't want you to see the numbers. Why? You were already paying for things. Mara thought of bags from the restaurant supply store, prescription copays, a new microwave she had claimed was discounted when it was not. She paid me back, sometimes. And you didn't think I needed to know? I told her the store needed shorter hours. She told me my eyebrows made me look dishonest. That was unrelated. She said that about your eyebrows for years. Dean turned. I was trying to help. You helped her hide it. You helped her keep doing it. The sentence landed between them without either one taking it back. Ray entered carrying a coil of measuring tape. Should I come back when the room contains fewer generations? No, Mara and Dean said together. Ray considered the matching answer and wisely addressed the counter. The service trench is shorter than I remembered. If you dig it, I can lower the labor. With what? Mara asked. A spoon? I have a trencher. Then why would I dig it? You can operate a trencher, Dean pointed at her. She drove the golf cart into the lake. That was 15 years ago. You were 20, 19. And I drove the front tires into the lake. Ray nodded. That changes the risk assessment. Mara crossed her arms. How much lower? He wrote a revised number beneath the first one. It was still painful, but no longer absurd. I can split the materials from the labor, he said. Materials up front. Labor in 3 payments. I'm not asking you to finance this. You didn't. I'm also not accepting charity. Good, because I enjoy getting paid. Dean leaned over the estimate. The campground might need the trencher for a water line. Mara looked at him. What? He said. Shared rental cost. It's business. Your mother will love that. My mother doesn't operate the trencher. Ray folded his tape measure. I'm going to inspect the roof while you two decide whether cooperation violates the family religion. He went outside. Dean picked up another trash bag. We're trenching Monday after next. Mason's checking the water line then. You already hired him? For the urgent work. Mom wants premium wilderness packages. Mom wants heated bathroom floors. In Ohio, apparently cold tile is keeping people from nature. Mara laughed, and Dean did too. His laughter faded first. The campground isn't in good shape, he said. I saw the tarps. The cabin roofs are manageable. The wastewater system's going to be expensive. The bathhouse needs work. Half the online reservations still get entered by Grandma in a paper book, except Grandma's dead and no one knows where she put the book, the bottom drawer of the lodge desk. Dean stared at her. She moved it there because the top drawer stuck in humidity. He pulled out his phone and typed a note. You're welcome, Mara said. I didn't say thank you. You typed thank you. He put the phone away. This is what she did. She kept everything in her head and then told one person one piece, usually while asking them to carry something. We're supposed to reopen the same weekend as the store. Then you have 11 weeks too. Mom already ran an ad. Of course she did. 2 sharp knocks sounded against the open door frame. An older man in a red quilted vest stood on the porch holding a thermos. His white beard was trimmed closely on one side and not at all on the other. Store open? He asked. No, Mara said. He looked past her at the bare shelves. Looks open. The lights don't work. Ruth's lights didn't work half the time. Frank? Dean asked. The man squinted at him. Depends who's asking. Mara remembered the note in the cash box. Frank who says he paid for propane? Frank's eyebrows rose. She kept that. She kept everything. I paid her. She used capital letters. That woman did not respect me. He came inside without invitation and set the thermos on the counter. Coffee, saw the shutters open. We're cleaning, Mara said. Good. Place smelled strange last August. Dean glanced around. It smells strange now? Different strange. Frank unscrewed the thermos lid and poured coffee into it. He offered it to Mara first. She accepted because the cup in her truck had been empty for hours. The coffee was strong, sweet, and flavored faintly with cinnamon. Frank looked at Ruth's stool. Sorry about your grandma. Thank you. She let me sit there the morning my wife went into surgery. Store wasn't supposed to open till 6. Ruth saw my truck by the boat ramp and made coffee at 4:30. Mara held the warm lid in both hands. Frank cleared his throat. She also overcharged for propane. You didn't pay for propane. See? Disrespect continues beyond the grave. He reached into his vest, pulled out a folded 20, and placed it beside the register. Mara stared at it. How much did you owe? 12. I don't have change. Put the rest toward the roof. I'm not open. Then don't give me a receipt. He poured coffee for Dean, took a drink directly from the thermos, and walked out. At the door, he looked back. You selling bait this year? I don't know. Sell the green worms. Fish around here are stupid for green. When his truck pulled away, Mara unfolded the 20. It was soft at the creases, the kind of Bill carried for a long time. Dean drank his coffee. One customer. You're almost solvent. He didn't buy anything? That was one of Grandma's better business models. Mara placed the bill in the metal cash box beside Ruth's 3 pennies, Canadian dime, and accusation against Frank. She did not cross out the note. By late afternoon, the store's shelves were empty and the floor had appeared beneath years of dust. Ray patched the worst roof flashing with materials from his van and marked 2 sections that needed replacement. Dean left twice to handle campground deliveries and returned both times without explanation. Curtis brought sandwiches around 3. He set Elaine's on the counter, even though she had not come back. Your mother needs time, he said. So does the roof. Curtis looked upward as if the roof might defend her. You know she's grieving. So am I. I know. He said it gently, which made Mara angrier than denial would have. When the others left, evening settled over the campground. Mara locked the store and tried the key Dean had given her in the trailer door. The lock turned after a hard shove. Inside, the air smelled of dust, vinyl, and the lavender sachets Ruth tucked everywhere. A narrow bed filled one end. The kitchenette held 2 mugs, a skillet, and a box of tea. The little table was buried under old campground brochures. There was no running water, and when Mara switched on a lamp, nothing happened. Still, the roof appeared dry. She carried in her overnight bag, the county folder, and the remaining enchiladas. Ruth's denim apron went over the back of a chair. The open sign rested on the table. Mara sat on the edge of the bed and checked her bank account. $149. She opened the green ledger to a fresh page. Beneath Ruth's final entry, she wrote the date, and then, coffee received, no charge. Old debt collected, $20. Electrical materials due. Too much. She paused, hearing Ruth's voice object to that last category. Mara crossed out too much and wrote the exact figure. Then she set Frank's 20 between the pages, turned off the flashlight, and lay down in the dark. Across the road, cabin lights came on one at a time as Dean tested the campground circuits. Behind her, somewhere inside the store wall, the mouse began scratching again. Rent is due Friday, Mara called to it. The scratching stopped. Thought so. The trailer heater woke with a sound like a restrained explosion. Mara sat upright, tangled in Ruth's quilt, and reached for the flashlight. A blue flame glowed behind the heater's grill. Warm air moved across the floor, carrying the smell of burned dust. Someone knocked on the trailer door. If that's you, God, I'm awake, she called. It's Dean, less impressive. She opened the door. Dean stood on the step, holding an empty propane cylinder. You hooked up the second tank, Mara said. The first one was empty. I didn't ask you to. You were sleeping in a metal box in March. I had blankets. You also had blue lips. My lips are naturally unfriendly. He set the empty cylinder beside the trailer. The campground was covered in white frost. Each picnic table edged sharply in it. Sunlight struck the lake through the trees and made the water look warmer than it had any right to. Dean pushed his hands into his jacket pockets. Dad said breakfast at the house if you want it. What about Mom? She made the breakfast. Then I definitely don't know what it costs. He looked toward the store. Ray's coming at 9. It's Sunday. He said something about the roof. He already patched it. That was apparently an insult to the roof, not a repair. Mara pulled Ruth's quilt tighter around her shoulders. Tell Dad thank you. I have enchiladas. For breakfast? They contain eggs and spirit. Dean started down the steps, then turned. The propane isn't leverage, Mara. I didn't say it was. You looked at it like it had terms and conditions. Everything in this family has terms and conditions. He nodded as though she had confirmed something and walked away. Ray arrived with lumber strapped to his van and his mother in the passenger seat. Sofia Alvarez climbed out before the van fully stopped. She was 71, barely 5 feet tall, and dressed for church in a purple coat with a rhinestone brooch. She carried a grocery bag in each hand. "Mara Evelyn," she said. Mara braced for condolences. Sophia handed her the bags. Towels, soap, mouse traps. The good kind. "Good morning to you, too. You slept in the trailer. How does everybody know that? It has windows." Ray unloaded a ladder. She wanted to see the wiring. "I wanted to see if you were charging too much," Sophia corrected. "He is." "Good. That means he respects you." She peered into the store, made one doubtful sound, then looked at Mara's thin sweatshirt. "You need a coat. I own a coat." Then involve it. Sophia left with Dean, who had been sent to take her home after she refused Ray's offer to wait in the van. Mara watched them cross the road together. 9 people? She asked. Ray steadied the ladder against the roof. She may have moved Dean to 10th. They spent the day replacing water-damaged decking above the stockroom. Mara stayed below, passing tools through the opening and discovering muscles she had not used since leaving Bellwether. Ray worked without making the job look generous. He complained about her grip on the drill, charged her for every piece of lumber, and ate the last enchilada without asking. When they finished, the patch section looked newer than the rest of the roof, and therefore slightly accusatory. Mara wrote the cost into the green ledger. Ray watched from the other side of the counter. "You know spreadsheets exist, so do chairs." Ruth distrusted both. "You worked in accounting for 11 months. You still know how numbers work. I know enough to fear them." That evening she built a spreadsheet anyway. She listed every cost that had to be paid before opening and separated it from everything she merely wanted. A commercial coffee maker went in the first column. Matching shelves went in the second. Fire extinguishers, first. New sign, second. A cooler that could maintain temperature without sounding possessed, first. Decorative canoe mounted over the door, never. She calculated how many cups of coffee, bags of ice, propane exchanges, and bundles of firewood she would need to sell, just to cover fixed expenses. The resulting number made Ruth's business model look less like optimism and more like a dare. At 1 in the morning, Mara removed half the proposed inventory. No souvenir sweatshirts, no 6 varieties of chili, no expensive fishing reels that might sit for years. Coffee, ice, firewood, basic groceries, first aid supplies, bait, batteries, RV fittings, and the small items people discovered they needed only after driving 20 minutes from town. At 2, she added prepaid camping bundles customers could order online and collect on arrival. Firewood, kindling, coffee, ice, and breakfast supplies in one box. Accounting had taught her that people paid more readily for convenience when they did not have to watch each item become expensive. At 3, she fell asleep at the trailer table with the laptop open against her forearm. Her tax refund arrived Wednesday. By Thursday, the county had most of it. Mara stared at the payment confirmation during her diner break and tried to appreciate the privilege of owing a government nothing for 11 more months. Then she picked up an extra Saturday shift, because the electrical materials deposit was due Monday. She drove between the diner and Bellwether until the route became less like travel than a long hallway connecting 2 exhausted versions of herself. At the diner, she poured coffee, counted tips, and smiled at people who complained their eggs were too wet. At the store, she scraped paint, scrubbed shelves, priced insurance, and learned that mice considered peanut butter a binding contract. Joni began leaving plates beneath the heat lamp with Mara's name written on the tickets. "I didn't order this," Mara said the first time. "You forgot to eat yesterday and apologized to a ketchup bottle. It was in my way. It was on the table." Mara ate the meatloaf. The following week, Ray brought the trencher. Mason Barlow's crew arrived at the same time to replace a section of Bellwether's water line. Dean had coordinated the rentals, which meant the muddy trench along the entrance cost both businesses less. Elaine stood beside the campground sign, with her arms crossed, watching Mara steer the machine. "This is exactly how the golf cart incident started," Dean called. Mara lowered the blade. "Keep talking, and I'll put heated floors in your grave." Ray raised a hand. "Try not to threaten people near my equipment." The trencher bucked when it struck a root. Mara held on, corrected too sharply, and carved a 6-foot curve away from the marked route. Dean stared at the trench. That's not where the line goes. It wanted character. Ray covered his eyes. Elaine walked back toward the lodge without saying a word. Somehow, that was worse than laughter. They corrected the path by hand. Dean climbed into the trench in clean jeans and ruined them within 10 minutes. Curtis brought coffee for everyone and stood near Mara while the men argued over conduit depth. "You could still reconsider," he said quietly. "The check's in 4 pieces. Checks can be rewritten. So can wills, apparently. Nobody got around to mine." Curtis winced. "That isn't fair." "No. Fair would have been calling me when she went into the hospital. You were notified, 3 days before she died. She asked for you, and Mom decided she didn't know what she was asking." Curtis stared into his coffee. Across the trench, Dean had gone still enough that Mara knew he was listening. "We thought seeing you would agitate her," Curtis said. "Did it?" "No." "Then you were wrong." He nodded once. "Yes." Mara had expected a defense. The simple agreement left nowhere for her anger to strike. Curtis rubbed mud from the toe of his shoe. "Your mother was scared. Every time Ruth said your name, Elaine heard an accusation. That sounds like her problem. It was. We made it yours." Ray called for Mara to check the conduit route. Curtis walked away before she could decide what to do with the apology. The new electrical service passed inspection on the second attempt. The first inspector objected to the emergency light over the rear door, and a junction box Ruth had concealed behind a souvenir calendar from 1997. Ray fixed both while insulting the calendar's covered bridge photography. When he finally switched on the main breaker, the store's front lights flickered twice. Then they stayed on. The old cooler began its metallic clatter. One fluorescent tube buzzed above the counter, throwing cold white light over the empty shelves. The register display blinked 12 o'clock, though it had never displayed time correctly in its life. Mara stood beneath the lights with both hands pressed to the counter. Ray packed his tools slowly. "You can say it." "Say what?" "That I'm brilliant. You wired a building. It's your profession. You threatened the neutral conductor personally. I thought we were celebrating." She turned on the coffee maker Ruth had left behind. Nothing happened. Ray looked at it. "That thing's dead. It was working in October. So was Ruth's calendar." Mara unplugged it. A commercial replacement would consume nearly everything she had earned in extra shifts. Ray studied her face. "There's an auction in town Friday. Restaurant closed. Might be one there. I work Friday. I can look. I'll pay you," I assumed. He left before she could make the terms sharper. The water line held pressure. The bathroom toilet flushed brown twice and then clear. Mara repainted the front room, the soft cream Ruth used to call rich people white. Frank appeared with a ladder and painted the trim in exchange for the cancellation of a propane debt that had apparently grown in his conscience. Other people stopped when they saw the shutters open. A fishing guide named Colleen asked whether Mara would carry live minnows. A retired mechanic wanted to know if the coffee would still be ready before sunrise. 2 RV owners left a handwritten list of hose fittings unavailable anywhere nearby. Nobody offered riches. They offered information, complaints, and strong opinions about bait. Mara wrote everything down. 3 weeks before Memorial Day, her landlord called while she was stocking mugs in the trailer cabinet. "Your rent's increasing in June," he said. "Insurance, taxes, you know how it is." "How much?" he told her. Mara looked around the trailer. Ray had restored electricity to it from the new service. The propane heater worked. The sink produced a thin but steady stream of hot water after Dean replaced a valve. Ruth's lavender sachets still overpowered the bathroom. "When do you need an answer?" she asked. "By Friday." She thought of the diner 90 miles away. She thought of gas, rent, repairs, and the store's still empty cash box. "I'll be out by the end of the month," she said. The words left her lightheaded. She worked her final scheduled diner shifts, packed her clothes into plastic bins, and gave away the framed Tuscan vineyard because Joni claimed it looked expensive from across a room. On her last night in the rented room, Mara sat on the bare mattress and counted the cash in her wallet. She could afford the auction coffee maker Ray had found, the first insurance payment, and part of the opening inventory. If nothing broke, her phone buzzed. A photograph from Dean showed the bellwether entrance after sunset. The campground's restored sign glowed on one side of the road. On the other, the old store shone through its uncovered windows. He had written, "Doesn't look useless." Mara stared at the message, then typed 3 different replies and erased them all. Finally, she sent, "Needs the final S." Dean answered, "S costs extra." Mara smiled despite herself. Then she folded Ruth's wooden open sign into a towel, placed it on top of her last bin, and turned out the light. Joni arrived with 2 coffees and a roll of packing tape before Mara had finished loading the truck. "You own packing tape?" Mara asked. "I've left 2 husbands. I own supplies." She taped the bottom of a bin Mara had trusted too much, carried the Tuscan vineyard downstairs, then stood beside the truck, looking at the stack of plastic containers under the camper's shell. "This all of it?" "Most of it. That is not enough stuff for a person your age. I have debt. It's invisible, but takes up a lot of space." Joni handed her one of the coffees. "You have my number. I already had your number. You had the diner's number. That only reaches me if Dale remembers how phones work." Mara put the new contact in her phone. Joni lit a cigarette and looked toward the highway. "If the store fails, you can come back." Comforting. "I mean it. Failure isn't a crime. If it was, half our customers would be fugitives." Mara hugged her before Joni could prepare a joke. The older woman held still for one surprised second, then wrapped both arms around her. "Don't apologize to the ketchup," Joni said into her hair. Mara drove away before either of them could make the goodbye larger. At Bellwether, the store had acquired a coffee maker. It sat on the counter in stainless steel dignity, twice the size of Ruth's machine, and marked with a strip of masking tape that said, "Pot B leaks if overfilled." Ray was underneath the sink, connecting the water line. "How much?" Mara asked. "Good to see you, too." She set Ruth's wooden open sign on the counter. "How much?" He slid out and handed her the auction receipt. The figure was lower than she expected. "What's wrong with it?" "Restaurant owner said it works. He also closed a restaurant. Unrelated, probably." Ray stood and looked at the bins in her truck. "You moved." "I did." "You sure?" "I gave up Tuscany." "That's serious." He studied her a moment longer than necessary, then carried in the heaviest bin without asking. Mara allowed it because the bottom was beginning to split. The final inspections arrived in pieces. Health approved the coffee station and packaged food sales, but required a different hand-washing sign. Fire objected to a stack of cardboard 6 feet from the new panel. The county inspector tested the ramp, measured the aisle, and stared at the old Bait refrigerator as though it had insulted his office. Mara corrected each problem, paid each fee, and taped every approval inside the stockroom door. The afternoon before Memorial Day weekend, she stocked the shelves. There was less merchandise than she had imagined during her spreadsheet nights. The center aisles looked sparse even after she faced every label forward and spread boxes to occupy more space. Coffee, shelf-stable milk, bread, eggs, bacon, aspirin, antacid, bandages, sunscreen, bug spray, batteries, paper towels, charcoal, fire starters, RV toilet chemicals, hose fittings, and the green rubber worms Frank had demanded. The cooler held bottled water, soda, sandwich meat, cheese, and 6 overpriced salads from a local deli. Bags of ice filled the freezer. Firewood bundles stood beneath a new tarp outside. Ray had built a simple counter display for the prepaid camping bundles, but only 4 people had ordered them. Mara placed Ruth's ceramic loon beside the register. The loon looked unimpressed. At 6 that evening, Dean walked in carrying a black plastic device. "Card reader," he said. "I have one. You have the old one. It only connects through the campground Wi-Fi. I'm getting my own internet next week. You said that last week. I also said you'd be more attractive if you stopped entering without knocking. It's a store. It's closed. You're standing behind a register." She took the device. "How much?" "Bellwether has 3. This one's extra." "What does your mother think?" "She thinks I'm checking cabin smoke detectors." "Are you?" Eventually, Mara plugged in the reader. It connected to Dean's phone hotspot and processed a $1 test sale. He picked up the receipt. "Congratulations, you've made $1. Minus transaction fees. That's the spirit." Across the road, cars were already arriving at the campground. Bellwether had advertised an early check-in for returning guests. A silver motorhome paused at the new automated gate. It rolled forward, stopped, reversed, then rolled forward again. Dean watched through the window. "Is it supposed to do that?" Mara asked. "The gate or the driver?" The motorhome's horn sounded. Dean ran across the road. At 5 the next morning, Mara hung Ruth's open sign on the front door. The string was new, but the wood still carried scratches from decades of being flipped. Mara turned on the coffee maker, filled both pots below the warning line, and opened the shutters. No one came, At 5:15, she checked the road. At 5:30, she rearranged the aspirin. At 5:42, Frank entered without speaking, placed exact change on the counter, and filled a travel mug. "You could say good morning," Mara told him. "Coffee first." He drank, considered, and added another quarter. Too strong? Almost. The retired mechanic arrived at 6. Colleen, the fishing guide, came at 6:10 for live minnows and complained that they were too lively. By 7, 3 RV owners had purchased hose fittings. One hiker had bought every banana Mara stocked, and a woman in a bellwether cabin wanted to know why her shower had no hot water. "You'll need to ask the campground," Mara said. "They sent me here." "Who did?" "A man at the gate." Dean appeared in the doorway behind her. "I did not send her here." The woman turned. "You pointed across the road. I said Mara might know which valve serves cabin 8. Mara stared at him. "The red one in the box behind cabin 6. Dean typed it into his phone. The woman bought a coffee while she waited. That became the shape of the morning. Guests arrived to purchase ice and stayed to ask where the dump station was, why the gate code failed, whether the lake had poison ivy, which road led to the North Trail, and what time the campground enforced quiet hours. Mara knew most of the answers. When she did not, she called someone who did. She sold out of ice before noon. The supplier's holiday schedule meant the next delivery would not arrive until Tuesday. Mara drove 25 miles to a wholesale club, bought every bag they allowed, and returned to find 7 people waiting outside because the store was locked. 1 left, 2 complained. 4 helped carry ice into the freezer. By sunset, the register total was the largest one-day number Mara had entered. It made her chest lift until she subtracted emergency ice, card fees, the deli salads nobody had purchased, and the firewood bundles that had absorbed rain through a tear in the new tarp. Ray came by after dark and found her spreading wet wood across the porch. "You're making a sculpture?" he asked. "I'm drying inventory. With night air, I'm shaming it." He took off his jacket and began restacking the driest bundles beneath the awning. "How was opening day?" "I ran out of ice, bananas, regular aspirin, green worms, and patience. So, people came. They also wanted the campground office." "Did you sell it to them?" Dean kept sending them over. "Charge him." "For what?" "Knowing things." "That's not a product." Ray lifted a wet log. Water ran down his wrist. "Neither is this." Mara sat on the porch step. Her feet throbbed inside her shoes. She had opened at 5 and eaten half a deli salad at 3 because its sell-by date made it the most urgent. Ray sat beside her, leaving a courteous foot of space. The bellwether sign glowed across the road. Behind it, campfires dotted the dark slope toward the lake. Voices carried through the trees. Someone laughed loudly enough to startle a bird from the roof. "You did it," Ray said. "I opened a door." "People underestimate doors." She rested her elbows on her knees. "I made $812. That sounds good. I spent $260 replacing ice. Inventory cost on what sold is around $300. Card fees, tax, utilities, waste. I regret asking. I'm not going to make enough. One day, the busiest weekend, then you adjust. You make that sound very calm. I'm not the one who bought 12 deli salads. 6. Still reckless." Mara nudged his boot with hers. Sunday was busier. Monday was worse. The coffee maker's second pot leaked exactly as promised, but only after Mara overfilled it during the morning rush. Brown water spread across the counter and dripped into the open drawer where she kept receipts. The bait refrigerator froze the minnows. A propane customer insisted Frank had promised him a discount. Frank denied possessing authority while standing behind the counter, eating Mara's cheese crackers. Elaine came in once, late Monday afternoon. She wore a bellwether polo shirt embroidered with the new logo and looked around at the crowded store. Muddy footprints crossed the floor Mara had scrubbed. Empty spaces showed on the shelves. A handwritten sign over the freezer said, "Ice Limit 2. "Busy," Elaine said. Mara scanned a package of batteries for a tired-looking man. "That's generally the hope. The entrance is congested. People are parking, along both sides. I can paint spaces next week. The campground sign is partially blocked by cars full of campground guests." Elaine waited until the customer left. "You're giving people outdated information," she said. "Quiet hours changed. The North Trail is closed beyond the ridge. Someone told a guest cabin 8's water valve was behind cabin 6. It is. Not after Mason moves it. Wednesday. Then tell me Wednesday. Elaine's mouth tightened. You are not the campground office, I'm aware. Then stop acting like it. Tell your operations manager to stop sending people here. Dean says you offered to help. I answered questions because adults kept standing in front of me asking them, and you enjoy being the person who knows. Mara's hand stopped over the register. Elaine glanced at the ceramic loon, Ruth's stool, the old cash box. Something in her face wavered, then hardened again. This is exactly how she did it, she said. Did what? Made herself necessary. Elaine walked out before Mara could answer. The holiday traffic vanished Tuesday morning. The campground emptied in waves until the road lay quiet beneath the trees. Mara opened at 5 anyway. By 9, she had sold 4 coffees, 1 newspaper, and a packet of antacid. At noon, she threw away the remaining deli salads. At 3, the ice supplier delivered more than she could fit in the freezer because her emergency purchase had not been reflected in the standing order. The following days stayed slow. Mara reduced the coffee she brewed and shortened the evening hours. She made signs for the items people had requested and watched those items sit untouched. The online bundles received 2 orders. Propane sales covered the cost of propane and little else. People still came for directions, package pickups Ruth had apparently arranged years ago, and news about which roads were flooded after rain. They asked when the mechanic would be available, whether Colleen had openings, and if Mara knew anyone who repaired awnings. They often left without buying anything. At the end of the store's 3rd week, Mara sat in the trailer with the green ledger, her spreadsheet, and a calculator. Gross sales looked respectable. Cash in the bank did not. She checked the figures twice, then found the pattern. Small discounts she had given without recording them. Coffee she had handed out while people waited. Supplies used at the campground and promised for later. A tab for Frank. Another for a guest whose wallet had been locked behind the malfunctioning gate. The amounts were not large individually. Together, they had eaten her electric payment. Mara turned back through Ruth's ledger and saw the same thing written in blue ink, month after month. Different names, different excuses, the same slow leak. From the store wall came a faint scratching. Mara looked up from the numbers. Don't, she told the mouse. This time, it did not stop. Mara set down the pencil and followed the sound into the store. The scratching came from behind the bottom shelf near the coffee station. She crouched, shone Ruth's flashlight into the gap, and saw 2 black eyes reflecting back at her. You have eaten enough. The mouse twitched its whiskers. I mean it. We are both living beyond our means. It disappeared into the wall. Mara found Sophia's unopened traps beneath the sink. The good kind turned out to be small plastic tunnels, designed to catch without killing. Sophia had included a jar of peanut butter and a note taped to the lid. Do not use too much. Mice are small, not stupid. Mara baited 2 traps, then sat behind the register with Ruth's ledger open beside her own. By midnight, she had circled every unpaid item from the first 3 weeks. The total was not enough to destroy a healthy business. This was not a healthy business. She made a new sign on the back of a cardboard coffee box. No tabs. Underneath she added, Frank, this includes you. She taped it to the cash register. Frank arrived at 5:40 the next morning, read the sign, and turned around. Where are you going? Mara called. To find a less hostile coffee shop. The nearest one opens at 7. He stopped in the doorway. Mara held out her hand. Frank sighed, returned to the counter, and placed $2 in her palm. This is how communities collapse, he said. This is how electric bills get paid. Ruth let me run a tab. Ruth wrote your name in capital letters. That was affection. He filled his travel mug and dropped his change into the tip jar with enough force to make the coins accuse her. The no tabs rule lasted 6 hours. Near noon, an exhausted woman from a walk-in campsite came to the counter with a bundle of firewood and a debit card that declined twice. She tried a credit card next. Declined. My bank put a travel block on everything, she said. I can call them when I get signal. There's Wi-Fi by the window. I tried. They have me on hold. The woman's face had the tight, humiliated look Mara knew from grocery lines and medical offices. Mara looked at the firewood, then at the sign. Take it, she said. Come back when you get it sorted. The woman returned 2 hours later and paid. She also bought a coffee and added $5 to the tip jar. That should have proved Mara could trust people. The man who promised to pay for a $28 RV adapter never returned. By closing, Mara had moved the no tab sign 3 inches higher, as if visibility had been the problem. Ray found her counting the register for the 3rd time. "I caught your mouse," he said. Mara looked up. He held one of Sophia's plastic tunnels. A small gray shape sat inside, furious but alive. "That's not my mouse. It listed this as its permanent address. Put it across the lake. I was thinking across the road. Elaine would blame me. She already does. This seems efficient." He carried the trap outside. Mara watched him walk toward the tree line beyond the store, far enough that the mouse would have to make a serious decision to return. When he came back, he set an envelope on the counter. Final invoice. Mara opened it. The balance for his labor was exactly what they had agreed, minus one line marked "Mouse Relocation, Complimentary." "I can pay the first installment Friday. That's when it's due, just making sure. I know you pay bills. How? You paid Ruth's." Mara stopped. Ray looked past her at the shelves. "She told me once." "What did she tell you?" "That you were covering the cooler repair and didn't want Elaine to know." "That was one repair. She said not to mention it because your mother would make it ugly." "She was right." "Was she?" Mara folded the invoice along its existing crease. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means Ruth made secrets out of ordinary things. Then everybody had to guess what the secret meant. She was trying to avoid a fight. She avoided it for herself." The words irritated Mara because they sounded too much like something Elaine might say if Elaine were willing to be fair. Ray noticed the open ledgers. "You're losing money. I'm experiencing negative profit. How much? Why does everybody ask questions they haven't financed?" He leaned against the cooler. "Because you look like you haven't slept since Eisenhower." "I sleep. In pieces. They add up." Ray picked up the cardboard sign. "No tabs. It's new. Effective? Not even slightly." He turned it over. "Then maybe the system's wrong. People should pay for what they take. That system has survived. You gave away coffee before there were customers." "I did not." "You gave me coffee while I worked. You drank my coffee without asking. That's different." Mara took back the sign. Ruth gave away enough to turn the whole business into charity with a bait refrigerator. "So, don't give it away alone." She frowned. Ray nodded toward the old corkboard on the wall near the door. Most of its paper notices had faded to gray rectangles. "People keep trying to add money to the tip jar. Frank paid extra. That woman paid extra. Frank made a protest deposit. Money doesn't care." The next morning, Mara cleared the corkboard. She removed notices for boats long sold, a roofing company whose number had been disconnected, and a handwritten offer to sharpen mower blades from a man who had moved to Florida. Beneath them, the cork retained bright squares of its original brown. On a clean index card, Mara wrote, "Coffee for someone who needs one, $2. She pinned a second card beneath it. Firewood, $8, then aspirin, sandwich, shower kit, and propane refill. At the register, she added an option to round purchases up, or prepay any item on the wall. If someone needed help, Mara could remove a card without creating another invisible debt. Frank studied the board for several minutes. "This is a tab with decorations," he said. "It's already paid. By strangers. By customers." He bought 2 coffees and paid for a third. Mara wrote "paid" in green across a coffee card. By the end of the week, the board held 9 green marks. The woman whose card had declined prepaid a firewood bundle before leaving Bellwether. Colleen covered 3 coffees and demanded Mara label them "for people who don't ask dumb fishing questions." Mara wrote it exactly that way. The wall did not solve the electric bill, but the leaking stopped. That mattered. She also stopped answering campground questions from memory alone. On the counter, she placed a binder labeled "Bellwether" and "Area Information." Dean provided updated quiet hours, trail closures, gate instructions, and emergency numbers after Mara threatened to write "Ask Elaine" on every page. Ray added electricians, plumbers, tow companies, and repair shops that actually answered their phones. Colleen listed local guides. Frank contributed a mechanic's number and then crossed it out because the mechanic was him. Mara made a simple map showing the campground loops, public lake access, nearest urgent care, fuel, groceries, and roads prone to flooding. She printed 50 copies at the library. People took all 50 in 4 days. The second printing had the store's hours, phone number, and prepaid bundle link along the bottom. That week, the online orders doubled from 2 to 4. Growth, Mara told the ceramic loon. The loon remained conservative. Dean began coming over after closing. He usually brought a question disguised as a purchase. A package of gum accompanied a request for Ruth's septic schedule. A bottle of water somehow required Mara to explain how seasonal RV guests had traditionally been assigned sites. One night, he set an RV adapter on the counter. $28, Mara said. I'm returning it. You didn't buy it. One of our guests did. Said he got the wrong size. Did he have a receipt? He said you'd remember him. I remember him. He owes me $28. Dean looked at the adapter. He told me he paid cash. He told me he was going to his RV for cash. And then, he apparently went to yours. Dean rubbed his forehead. I gave him a refund. Congratulations. You bought an adapter. He took out his wallet. No, Mara said. Bellwether bought it. I'm invoicing the campground. For $28? For the adapter, 2 cases of bottled water your maintenance crew charged here, coffee for Mason's workers, and the firewood your guests took when your office was closed. How much? Mara slid an itemized page across the counter. Dean read it. You charged us for maps. I printed your gate code on them. You charged 15 minutes for guest assistance. 3 people, 5 minutes each. You're billing us for knowing things? Apparently it's a product. He glanced at her, recognizing Ray's line without knowing its origin. Mom will object, he said. Then Mom can handle every question herself. Dean folded the invoice and put it in his pocket. I'll pay it. You personally? From Bellwether's operating account. Do you have authority? I'm the operations manager. The title sounded fragile when he said it. Mara crossed her arms. Does she know that? She tells people constantly. That wasn't my question. No, Dean said. She doesn't know I can authorize expenses under $500. Dad set up the account. Do not make me part of another family secret. It's not a secret. It's a bank limit. Tell her before you pay me. Why? Because I'm done having ordinary business turned into betrayal after the fact. Dean looked at the invoice again. You really think that's what happened? I think Grandma signed a lease with me, told Mom something else, hid bills from both of us, and died leaving everybody convinced somebody had tricked them. The stockroom refrigerator cycled off. In the sudden quiet, the lake insects beyond the windows sounded impossibly loud. Dean rested both hands on the counter. You want to know why I didn't call you when Grandma went into the hospital? Mara's body went still. I know why, she said. Mom told you not to. She did. And you listened. Yes. He did not soften the answer. Mara waited. Dean looked toward Ruth's stool. I also thought if you came back, she'd put you in charge of everything again. Not legally, just because you'd know what to do and the rest of us would stand around waiting. That's not why I came. I know that now. You knew it then. He shook his head. I knew you were better at this than me. That wasn't the same thing. The confession was not yet an apology. It was too bare and selfish to be one. Mara felt anger arrive slowly, heavier than the sharp kind. You let me miss 3 weeks, she said. I know. You let me walk into that hospital thinking she'd gotten sick on Thursday. I know. And now you come over every night asking me where she kept things. Dean's face tightened. I know. Mara picked up the invoice and tore it once down the center. Dean flinched. She laid the 2 pieces in front of him. That account is closed, she said. Tomorrow you start a new one, written agreement. Who can charge what I provide when Bellwether pays? You want my help? You don't sneak over here with gum. He looked at the torn invoice. What about this one? You go back to your office and remake it from my copy. Then you tell Mom before you authorize it. That sounds like a lot of work. $28 buys character. Dean gathered the pieces. At the door, he stopped. I am sorry. Mara did not rescue him by asking which part. He waited, then left. The electric bill was due the next morning. When Mara checked the store account, Bellwether's payment was there, including the map charges and 15 minutes of knowing things. She paid the bill. Then she opened the corkboard drawer, took out a fresh green marker, and crossed off 1 coffee for herself. The coffee tasted better when someone else had paid for it. Mara drank it standing beneath the corkboard, then wrote, "Thank you," across the green mark she had used. It seemed important that gratitude be visible, too. At 8:15, Elaine entered carrying the 2 torn pieces of Bellwether's invoice. She placed them on the counter, aligned the ripped edges, and smoothed the page flat. You charge the campground for directions, maps, directions printed on paper, and guest assistance, answering questions. Mara set down her cup. Dean told you? He presented me with a proposed account agreement at breakfast. That was fast. He put it next to my toast. His timing needs work. Elaine took a second page from her purse. It was the agreement Mara had told Dean to make, neatly typed and revised in red ink. Nearly every sentence had suffered. You will not represent Bellwether, Elaine said. I don't want to. You will not make promises on our behalf. I haven't. You will not criticize campground operations to guests. Do accurate information and criticism overlap? Elaine ignored that. Package deliveries for Bellwether guests must remain separate from any delivery service you operate. We aren't responsible for items left here. Good. And you cannot use the campground name in advertising without approval. I put it on a map showing where the campground is, which makes it appear we endorse the store. Bellwether's automated gate has sent people backward into a ditch twice. Endorsement isn't my main concern. Elaine's red pen stopped against the paper. Once, Dean said twice. Dean exaggerates when he thinks incompetence will make people help him. Mara thought of his gum purchases and midnight questions. That is unfortunately true. For a second, the agreement lay between them as something they could both understand. Then Elaine looked toward the corkboard. What is that? Prepaid supplies. The board held green marks beside coffee, firewood, sandwiches, and shower kits. Colleen had added a card promising 1 free hour of fishing advice, except for idiots. Charity, Elaine said. Already paid. Mother used to do the same thing. No, Grandma gave things away and hoped people came back. This is accounted for. Elaine touched the edge of a coffee card. Her nail rested beside the word paid. She had a board once, she said. During the mill strike, people left quarters for soup. Mara had never heard that story. What happened to it? Summer came. People went back to work. She used the board for fishing licenses. The softness left Elaine's face as soon as Mara noticed it. She pushed the revised agreement across the counter. If Dean insists on paying you for support, these are the terms. Mara read the red editions. Most were reasonable. A few were written simply to prove Elaine possessed a pen. Payment in 45 days. Standard 14, 30, 21. Elaine gave her a long look. You used to negotiate like Ruth. Ruth would have asked for cash and forgotten who owed it. 21, Elaine said. They both initialed the change. It was not peace. It was an account. The store found a rhythm as June became July. Mornings belonged to coffee, fishing supplies, and campers who had forgotten toothpaste. Afternoons brought ice, cold drinks, RV parts, and travelers searching for cell signal. Evenings filled with firewood and people asking whether the rain would pass. Mara stopped stocking what people claimed they might buy and began tracking what they actually bought. The deli salads disappeared. Local eggs sold out. Canned chili was reduced to 2 kinds, neither turkey. Prepaid bundles grew after she added them to the map and offered a small discount for ordering before arrival. The numbers edged toward balance. So did the store's invisible work. Mara added a radio charging shelf near the front window, each outlet numbered with a matching tag. The binder gained sections for towing, medical care, road closures, laundromats, propane, and late-night food. She made a package log instead of relying on memory. When someone asked for a ride, a tool, a guide, or a mechanic, she connected them with people who had agreed to be listed. The corkboard became a living thing. Notes appeared offering canoe repair, guitar lessons, rides into town, used camp stoves, and help hauling trailers. Mara removed anything without a phone number and one mysterious card that said, "Ask Glenn about Thursday." No one knew Glenn. Frank claimed that was the point. Dean came over less often because the binder answered questions he used to ask. When he did come, he brought Bellwether's weekly account sheet and paid for what his staff used. Sometimes he stayed for coffee after closing. They did not discuss the hospital again, but he stopped pretending their conversations were accidental. Curtis repaired the flower pot-supported porch step one Tuesday without announcing himself. Mara found him kneeling in sawdust, fitting a new riser. "I was going to hire someone," she said. "You did?" My rate is 1 cup of coffee and no conversation. Expensive. He held out his hand. She gave him coffee. Elaine did not enter the store for 3 weeks after signing the agreement, but Mara saw her across the road every day. She moved through the campground in crisp polo shirts, inspecting cabins, correcting signs, and greeting guests with a warmth she rarely brought home. She was good at it. That was another fact Mara had not wanted. The campground improved. The gate still malfunctioned, but less often. Dean learned the water system. Cabin decks stood level. The heated bathroom floors vanished from the plans without public mourning. Mara's own expenses remained less cooperative. The cooler required a new thermostat. The insurance company increased the premium after inspecting the propane cage. Gas for the round trips ended when she moved, but every saved dollar seemed to introduce itself to a new bill. She opened at 5 and closed at 9. On slow afternoons, she repaired, ordered inventory, cleaned, updated accounts, and answered calls. She ate standing up. She slept in the trailer with her phone volume high enough to hear anyone knocking at the store. Ray began leaving bottles of water beside the register. Mara began resenting them on principle. "You know the sink works," she told him. "You know drinking from it requires a cup. I own cups." Then this mystery deepens. One Thursday, the temperature climbed past 95 before noon. Humidity pressed against the windows, and the store's small air conditioner dripped steadily into a bucket. A storm 2 nights earlier had loosened the final S on the camp supplies sign. It hung by one screw, tapping the siding whenever the wind moved. Ray told Mara he would fix it after work. At 3, the tapping became unbearable. She found the extension ladder behind the propane cage and set it against the porch awning. The metal rungs burned her palms. She climbed with a drill tucked through her belt and 2 screws between her lips. From the ladder, the campground looked bleached by heat. Empty picnic tables sat beneath still trees. The lake had gone flat and bright as sheet metal. Mara reached the sign and drove 1 screw through the lower corner of the S. The drill slipped. She caught it, swore, and adjusted her footing. The roofline tilted. She blinked. It stayed tilted. Mara gripped the ladder. Heat pulsed behind her eyes. She tried to descend, but her right foot missed the rung. The next moment came in pieces, her shoulder striking the awning, the drill falling, a man shouting from the road. Then gravel pressed into her cheek. She opened her eyes to Ray kneeling over her. "Don't move. I'm on the ground," I noticed. Then movement has already happened. His face was pale beneath his tan. He touched her neck, checking her pulse, then looked at her pupils with the flashlight on his phone. "What day is it?" "Thursday. Your name?" "Mara Evelyn Bell." "Where are you?" "Being patronized in front of my store." He exhaled. "Anything hurt?" "My shoulder." "Head? No. Back? No." "You fell 8 feet. I came down in stages. That's not better." A camper from across the road stood nearby, holding the fallen drill. Dean ran from the campground office, followed by Elaine. "What happened?" Dean asked. "She fell," Ray said. Elaine dropped to her knees beside Mara. "Did you hit your head?" "No, you don't know that." "I was there." Elaine pressed 2 fingers to Mara's wrist, then touched her forehead. Her hands were cool. "She's burning up." "I'm fine," Mara said. Elaine looked at Ray. "Call an ambulance." "No," Mara said. Ray did not reach for his phone. "She needs to be evaluated." "I'll drive her," Dean said. "I have customers." There were no customers. The store door stood open on an empty aisle. Elaine's face changed when she looked inside. Not anger. Recognition. "She hasn't eaten," she said. "I ate." "What?" Mara tried to remember. Ray found a water bottle beneath the counter and brought it outside. The seal cracked when he opened it. "Small sips," he said. Mara drank. Her stomach tightened immediately. Elaine stood. "Close the store." "You can't tell me." "Close it, Mara." The words had Ruth's voice inside them. Ray helped Mara sit. Pain moved through her shoulder, but no farther. Dean retrieved the keys from the counter and flipped the sign to closed. At urgent care, the physician diagnosed dehydration, bruising, and a mild shoulder strain. No concussion, no broken bones. Mara left with instructions to rest, drink fluids, and avoid ladders for several days. Elaine had returned to the campground. Dean drove Mara back and stopped beside the trailer. Ray waited on the steps. "I'm going to check the ladder," Dean said. "The ladder didn't dehydrate me. It's safer than talking to you." He left. Ray followed Mara inside the trailer. He put her discharge papers on the table and opened the refrigerator. "You have mustard," he said. "There's other food." "Where?" "The store. That's inventory. I pay for it. Do you?" Mara sat carefully on the bed. "Please don't." Ray closed the refrigerator. "Your grandmother did this. You don't get to use her against me. She worked until her body made the decision for her. I fell off a ladder. Because you hadn't eaten and it was 100 degrees. 97. He turned toward her. Anger made his voice quieter. "You are not honoring Ruth by becoming the next person everybody depends on while you disappear in front of them." Mara looked away. Through the trailer window, the restored S sat straight on the store sign. "I can't afford staff," she said. "Then shorten the hours." "I can't afford that either. You can't afford another fall." "I know. Do you?" She pressed her good hand against her forehead. "I don't know how to stop and still keep it." Ray sat at the table, leaving space between them. For a while, neither spoke. Then he took out his phone. "What are the hours tomorrow? 5 to 9? No? Ray. What hours can the store survive?" Mara looked at the green ledger beside his hand. 6 to 7, she said finally. "Maybe 8 on Fridays." He typed it in. "And you need help during weekend rush. I can pay 12 hours, then hire 12. "Who?" A knock sounded against the trailer door. Sophia entered carrying a pot with both hands. "I brought soup," she said. "Also, Frank says he can work mornings if nobody expects courtesy." Mara closed her eyes. Sophia set the pot on the stove. "Good. You are resting already." Mara opened one eye. "I am not hiring Frank." Sophia lifted the lid from the pot. Steam filled the trailer with chicken, garlic, and something green Mara could not identify. "Then he will volunteer and insult customers for free," Sophia said. "This is worse." Ray remained at the table, looking unbearably satisfied. "I can see you," Mara told him. "I haven't said anything." "Your eyebrows have. Those are Dean's dishonest eyebrows." Sophia filled a bowl and placed it in Mara's hands. "Eat." The soup contained noodles, vegetables, and pieces of chicken large enough to require attention. Mara ate slowly while Sophia replaced the trailer's wilted mustard with a row of plastic containers from her grocery bags. "I can cook," Mara said. "So can I. This is why the world has choices." Frank arrived before she finished the bowl. He stood outside the screen door in his red vest, holding a notepad and a travel mug. "I want $15 an hour." "You offered," Mara said. "I've reconsidered my value. You have no retail experience. I once owned a repair shop. You argued with every customer. Those were consultations." Mara looked at Ray. He raised both hands. "I'm not involved." Sophia pointed a wooden spoon at her son. "You are always involved. This is your main problem." They settled on $12 an hour, free coffee during shifts, and no authority to extend credit. Frank agreed to work from 6 to 10 on Saturdays, Sundays, and one weekday morning, so Mara could handle ordering and sleep past dawn. His first shift produced 3 complaints and the highest coffee sales of the week. One complaint was from Frank himself. Mara closed the store entirely the day after her fall. She spent most of it in the trailer with ice on her shoulder, updating the website and discovering how loudly the store's ordinary sounds carried through the wall. The cooler cycled, the front bell rang. Frank told someone he did not stock fancy aspirin, though all aspirin looked fancy to him. At noon, he knocked and handed Mara a paper bag containing a sandwich. "Paid for," he said before she could ask. "By the board." "Who used a green mark on me?" "Anonymous donor." "Was it you?" Donors enjoy privacy. She ate the sandwich. Elaine came after sunset carrying Ruth's green barn coat. Mara opened the trailer door, but did not invite her in. The evening was still warm. Elaine had folded the coat over both arms, blue-threaded cuff facing upward. "You left this at urgent care," Elaine said. "That's yours. I wore it once. You took it from the mudroom. I took it because it was raining. 3 months ago." Elaine held out the coat. Mara accepted it, though she did not remember wearing it to urgent care. Her mother looked past her into the trailer. The empty soup bowl sat in the sink. Ruth's quilt was bunched on the bed. The wooden open sign rested on the table beside the ledger. "You really live here," Elaine said. "I'd been hoping the bin suggested that. There's barely room to turn around. Then it discourages dancing." Elaine did not smile. "Your grandmother slept in this trailer the summer after her second surgery. She told everyone she was fine." "I know." "No?" You were working in Cincinnati then. Mara waited. Elaine touched the repaired cuff. She came into the house one morning and fell asleep sitting at the kitchen table. I told her the store was killing her. She said people needed her. People did. That was always her answer. A mosquito hovered near Elaine's cheek. She waved it away. She made being needed sound holy, Elaine said. Then anyone who asked her to stop became selfish. Mara looked toward the dark store. Frank had flipped the sign to closed and shut the lights before leaving. For once, nothing required her on the other side of the wall. You think I'm doing the same thing? I watched you fall off a ladder because you wouldn't wait 4 hours for help. The sign was tapping. Yes, clearly an emergency. Mara folded the coat more tightly against her chest. You still let me miss her. Elaine's gaze dropped. You were angry at Grandma, Mara continued. You punished me with the hospital because you couldn't punish her anymore. I believed you upset her. You believed it was useful to believe that. The words remained outside between them. Elaine's mouth tightened, but her voice did not. Yes? Mara had heard Curtis admit they were wrong. Dean had admitted why he obeyed. Elaine's single syllable hurt more, perhaps because it arrived without anybody to blame. Why didn't you call earlier? Mara asked. I kept thinking she would stabilize. Then I kept thinking the next day would be better. Elaine rubbed her thumb across the blue stitches on the cuff. By the time I understood there wasn't a better day, calling you meant admitting what I had already done. So, you waited until I couldn't forgive you. I waited until forgiveness was no longer the most urgent thing. Mara looked at her mother's face. In the porch light, Elaine appeared older than she had in Ruth's kitchen, not softer, only less protected. I didn't manipulate Grandma into giving me the lease, Mara said. I know. Did you know then? Elaine hesitated. Yes. Mara nearly stepped back. You told everybody I did. I said you encouraged her to keep it open. You said I was waiting for an inheritance. I was angry. You disowned me. I know what I did. Then say it. Elaine looked toward Ruth's house through the trees. I don't know how to say it in a way that changes anything. It won't. That's the problem. No, that's the consequence. Elaine flinched, almost invisibly. She stepped off the trailer's bottom stair. Rest your shoulder. Don't make caring sound like an order. Fine. Elaine looked up at her. Please rest your shoulder. She walked across the road without asking for the coat back. Mara sat at the trailer table afterward with Ruth's coat in her lap. The pockets held a paper clip, a petrified cough drop, and a small screwdriver. No message, no explanation. Only the ordinary evidence of a woman expecting things to need adjustment. Mara shortened the store hours the next morning. Nothing collapsed. A few early fishermen complained, but Frank covered the busiest dawn shifts. Closing at 7 reduced the long, empty hours when Mara sold 1 bag of chips while running lights and air conditioning. She used Tuesday mornings for inventory and bookkeeping. On Fridays, she stayed open until 8 because firewood sales justified it. She paid Ray's second installment on time. By August, she could pay herself a small weekly amount. It did not equal her diner wages, but the trailer had no rent, and the truck stayed parked most days. She ate food from the grocery store rather than store inventory, and kept water beneath the counter, which Ray inspected without comment. Bellwether paid its account every 21 days. The store's information binder reduced pressure on Dean and generated business for local tradespeople. Package pickups became a small paid service with lockers Ray helped anchor to the porch wall. Pre-ordered arrival bundles increased after Dean included Mara's link in Bellwether's confirmation emails, a decision Elaine approved in writing. The arrangement was useful enough that nobody called it reconciliation. During a brief power outage in mid-August, the campground gate froze closed for 20 minutes. The store's lights went out too, but Ruth's old propane generator sat beneath a metal cover behind the cage. It had not run since the previous summer. Ray cleaned the fuel line, replaced a cracked hose, and made Mara start it herself. The engine coughed twice, then settled into a loud, steady thrum. It could not power everything, but it kept the cooler, front lights, radio shelf, and 1 coffee pot running. "Expense!" Mara shouted over the engine. "Back up!" Ray shouted back. Expense wearing a helmet. She kept it serviced. She also kept Ruth's old landline, even after the phone company raised the rate. Cell reception vanished whenever summer storms rolled over the ridge. The line worked through the short outage, and 3 people used it while their phones searched uselessly for signal. At the end of August, Bellwether filled for the holiday weekend. Dean's reservation list showed every cabin occupied and nearly every RV site booked. Elaine scheduled a lakeside dinner for returning guests. Curtis ordered string lights for the lodge deck. Mara increased ice, coffee, and water orders, but refused the deli representative's attempt to revive the salads. The weather report on Friday morning mentioned severe storms late Saturday. By Friday night, the forecast had changed from scattered to likely. Mara printed the county alert and pinned it beside the register. Dean came over while she was checking flashlight batteries. "Mom says not to alarm guests," he said. "It's a weather notice, not a skull. The dinner's tomorrow. Clouds don't honor reservations. We have emergency procedures." "Where?" He pointed toward the campground office. "Digitally," Mara said, "and printed." "How many copies?" Dean did not answer. She opened the information binder and removed the campground map. "Print one for every occupied site. Mark the bathhouse, lodge, store, and block building by the maintenance barn. The block building is full of equipment. Move the equipment." He took the map. "You enjoy this? Being right? Expecting things to go wrong?" Mara looked at him. Somebody in this family should. By Saturday afternoon, the sky had turned a strange yellow-gray. Heat pressed down without wind. Campers came to the store for ice and asked Mara whether the storm would miss them. "I don't negotiate with weather," she said. Frank volunteered to stay late. Mara sent him home at 7 with 2 prepaid sandwiches and instructions to keep his phone charged. She filled both coffee urns, secured the propane cage, moved the porch displays inside, and checked the generator. Across the road, Elaine's dinner continued beneath the lodge awning. Adult guests sat at long tables while string lights glowed above them. Curtis watched the western sky. Dean carried stacks of folded maps between the office and bathhouse. Ray arrived in his van as the first wind struck. Leaves turned pale sides upward. The camp supplies sign groaned against its new screws. "You planning to sleep tonight?" he asked. "I'll rest my eyes." Thunder rolled across the lake. The store lights flickered once. Across the road, Bellwether's automated gate lowered and rose halfway, then stopped. Every phone on Mara's charging shelf lost signal at the same time. The lights went out. The emergency light above the rear door blinked on, turning everyone the color of old paper. Ray was already moving. "Flashlight." Mara pulled Ruth's from beneath the register and threw it to him. The beam was stronger now. She had finally retired the exhausted batteries. "Generator," she said. "Close the front door." Wind slammed it before she reached it. The brass bell struck the glass hard enough to crack its wooden bracket. Mara caught the handle with both hands, pulled the door shut, and turned the lock. Rain hit the windows sideways. Ray opened the back door. "Stay inside. You need someone at the panel. You know the sequence? Main off, generator breaker off, start it, warm it, transfer." He stared at her for 1 second. "Come on then." They ran into the rain. Water crossed the gravel in silver sheets. Mara's shirt soaked through before they reached the metal generator cover. Ray raised it and held the flashlight while she checked the fuel valve, pulled the choke, and pressed the starter. The engine coughed. Nothing. "Again," Ray said. She tried. A gust tore the cover from his hand and slammed it against the propane cage. The generator coughed a second time, shuddered, and caught. "Warm it," Ray shouted. Mara counted while rain ran into her eyes. Ray secured the cover with a bungee cord. Then they hurried inside and made the transfer. The front lights returned. One coffee maker came alive with a click. The cooler began humming. The numbered outlets on the charging shelf lit green. Across the road, Bellwether remained dark. A figure ran through the rain toward them. Dean hit the porch at speed, slipped on the wet step Curtis had repaired, and caught himself against the railing. "The gate's stuck," he said as Mara unlocked the door. The lodge generator didn't start. "Where are your maps?" "Office and bathhouse." "I printed them." "Guest list?" "Reservation system's down." "Paper copy?" Dean's face answered. Mara pulled the Bellwether account binder from beneath the counter. It did not contain a full guest roster, but every arrival bundle ordered through the store included a name, site, and phone number. The package log held more names. The campground map showed every numbered cabin in sight. "We build one," she said. "From what?" "Your memory, my records, and people who can tell us where they're staying." Thunder cracked directly overhead. The front window shook. Ray picked up the landline. A dial tone sounded. I'm calling the utility in County Road. Dean looked across the road. Under the lodge awning, people were carrying chairs inside. The string lights had gone black. I need to get the gate open. Take flashlights, Mara said, and leave one person at the office. We don't have radios. I have 3 on the rental shelf. He grabbed them. Dean, he stopped. Write down who takes each one. He almost argued, then found the clipboard beside the charging shelf and wrote. The first guests reached the store before he made it across the road. A soaked couple from cabin 12 wanted batteries and information. An RV owner needed to know whether the weather alert required evacuation. A woman in sandals said her husband used medication that had to remain refrigerated if the power stayed off. Mara put both hands on the counter. Everybody, give me 1 minute. No one did. Questions overlapped. Wind hammered the building. Ray covered one ear while speaking into the landline. The coffee maker began dripping into an empty space because Mara had forgotten to put the pot beneath it. She shoved the pot into place, then took the thick green marker from the prepaid board. On a large campground map, she wrote 3 headings. Accounted for. Needs. Check. Needs help. She asked the couple their names and cabin number, marked cabin 12 green, and gave them 2 flashlights from store stock. The RV owner was on Site 31 with 2 other adults. All 3 were safe. Mara marked them green and told him there was no evacuation order. The medication went into the store cooler inside a paper bag labeled with the owner's name and site. One question at a time became information. Information became a list. Ray hung up. County says shelter in place. Trees down on 16 in both directions. Fire department knows we're blocked, but they've got calls ahead of us. Utility, wide outage, no estimate. The landline rang before he released it. Colleen was calling from the public boat ramp. She and 2 adult clients had taken shelter in the concrete restroom building after getting off the water. They were safe, but had 1 weak flashlight. Mara marked their location and told them to stay put. Can someone reach them? Ray asked. Not until the wind drops. The footpath floods near the culvert. A crash came from behind the store. Mara spun toward the stockroom. The generator continued running. The cooler lights remained on. Ray opened the rear door a crack and shone his flashlight outside. A thick branch had fallen from the maple behind the trailer. One end rested across its roof. My trailer, Mara said, still standing. I need to check. You need to stay where the dry maps are. It's where I live, and nobody is in it. The truth did not make the sound of rain on the trailer roof easier to imagine. Mara closed the door. Bellwether's lodge emptied 20 minutes later. The awning had begun tearing away from the building, and water was entering through a set of doors facing the lake. Elaine led a line of drenched guests toward the bathhouse and store, while Curtis and 2 adult campers carried supplies. Dean directed RV guests to remain in their vehicles unless a tree threatened them. Elaine entered last. Water streamed from her hair and the sleeves of her embroidered polo. Mud streaked one cheek. She looked at the crowded aisles, the glowing lights, and the names accumulating across Mara's map. The lodge's emergency lights will last another hour, she said. Bathhouse is on batteries. We moved everyone away from the glass. Good. Cabins 3 through 8 are accounted for. 12 is here. 14 called the office before the phones dropped. Mara marked them. Who's checking the lake row? She asked. Dean and Curtis. Dean has a radio. Curtis? No. Then Curtis stays with Dean. Elaine glanced toward Ray as though seeking a more acceptable source of instructions. Ray was connecting an extension strip to the generator circuit. She's right. I didn't say she wasn't. You made the face. Mara took Ruth's green barn coat from the hook behind the counter and handed it to Elaine. Her mother stared at it. You're shivering, Mara said. Put it on and take names, cabin or site number, how many adults, anything they need. I can do more than take names. I know. That's why I need you doing it. Elaine pulled on Ruth's coat. The sleeves were short enough to expose her wrists. For a moment she stood beside the map, looking much younger than 60, not because of the coat itself, but because she knew exactly how to wear it. She found a second marker, drew columns on a legal pad, and began asking questions in a voice that cut cleanly through the room. Cabin number? How many in your party? Anyone still outside? Do you require refrigerated medication, oxygen, or electrical support? Her handwriting resembled Ruth's, though narrower. Mara poured coffee into paper cups. She placed bottled water and packaged food on the counter, recording what left without charging anyone individually. Bellwether had an account. The prepaid wall had green marks. The rest could be sorted when the roof was no longer trying to leave. A man from Site 19 brought in a battery radio. The weather station reported wind gusts over 60 miles per hour. Mara placed the radio beside the binder, low enough to hear without adding panic to the room. The store filled beyond comfort. Mud spread across the cream-painted floor. People sat on coolers and overturned firewood crates. Someone opened the door too often, and Frank's hostile no-tab sign tore loose in the draft. The roof began leaking near the old candy aisle. Ray positioned buckets while Mara moved maps and chargers. The new stockroom patch held. The older front section did not. "You paid for partial competence," he said. "I'll file a complaint." A radio crackled on the counter. Dean's voice broke through static. "Mara," she grabbed it. "Here. Tree down between sites 22 and 26. Nobody hit. 26 is empty. 2 adults at 24 are moving to the bathhouse." Elaine checked her list. "Site 23? Mara pressed the button. 23 isn't accounted for." A pause. "I'll check. Take someone with you. Dad's here." Curtis's voice sounded faintly behind him. "I remain supervised." The radio went silent. Elaine's marker stopped against the paper. Mara saw her mother's hand tighten, but did not comment. She placed another cup of coffee beside her. Elaine drank it without looking up. 10 minutes later, Dean reported that Site 23's occupants had gone into town before the storm. Their vehicle was not present. No one remained unaccounted for inside the campground. The collective exhale inside the store sounded almost like laughter. Then the landline rang again. Frank was on the other end. "Your roof still attached?" he asked. "Most of it. Roads blocked by the old Becker place. I've got a saw. You are not using a chainsaw in this wind. I operated a repair shop. This is not a consultation. Call me when it drops." Mara added Frank and his address to the outside contact list. Colleen called again to confirm the water at the culvert had risen but remained below the footbridge. The hours lost shape. Rain came in waves. The generator burned through the first cylinder, and Ray switched to the second. The store's supply of bottled water dropped. One coffee pot cracked when someone set it on a wet counter. The front leak spread until 4 buckets occupied the aisle. At midnight, the worst wind moved east. The rain continued, but individual sounds returned. Dripping gutters, low conversation, the generator's engine, frogs calling from flooded ditches. Curtis and Dean came in soaked, carrying a red plastic fuel can and 3 flashlights. Curtis had a cut across one forearm. Elaine cleaned it with supplies from the first aid shelf while scolding him for not wearing heavier gloves. "You told me to leave the heavy gloves in the truck," he said. "I was wrong." Curtis looked at Mara over Elaine's shoulder. "Write down the date." Dean leaned against the counter. Mud covered him to the knees. "All occupied sites accounted for," he said. "No injuries beyond Dad's dramatic scratch and a sprained ankle at the bathhouse." Mara marked the final line, green. Elaine looked at the page. Every cabin in sight had a notation. Names, locations, needs. Nobody reduced to a number inside an unavailable app. "She used to keep a board like this," Elaine said. "Grandma, every holiday weekend, behind the register." Mara glanced at the corkboard filled with prepaid coffee and firewood. It changed. Elaine touched the sleeve of Ruth's coat. "Not as much as I thought." Near 3 in the morning, people began sleeping where they sat. Ray took over the radio while Mara rested on Ruth's stool with her shoulder against the wall. Dean lay on the floor beside the ice freezer. Curtis and 2 campers waited for daylight before attempting the blocked road. Elaine remained at the counter. "You can sit," Mara said. "So can you." "I am sitting. That stool doesn't count. Mother used to sleep on it and call it a break." Mara stood. Together they carried 2 chairs from the trailer, ducking beneath the branch on its roof, and placed them behind the counter. The trailer's metal skin was dented and a roof seam had split. Rainwater had soaked the bed and 1 bin of Mara's clothes. She saw the damage only long enough to understand the cost before returning inside. At dawn, the clouds lifted enough to reveal the lake. Branches covered the campground road. The lodge awning hung in strips. One cabin porch had lost its railing and leaves plastered every surface. The store's camp supplies sign remained attached, final S and all. The generator sputtered as the second cylinder neared empty. Mara stood on the porch with a cup of cold coffee. Around her, people emerged slowly into the gray morning, checking vehicles and speaking in lowered voices. Elaine came out wearing Ruth's coat. Across the road, Dean and Curtis began organizing adults with saws, ropes, work gloves, and trucks. Ray shut down non-essential circuits to save the remaining fuel. Mara looked through the store window at the mud, empty shelves, cracked coffee pot, dripping ceiling, and pages of names taped across the wall. They had made it through. She had no idea what it had cost. The cost began with the obvious things. 37 bags of ice had melted. The emergency coffee, bottled water, batteries, food, flashlights, and first aid supplies came to more than $900. 2 propane cylinders were empty. The front roof needed repair, the trailer needed a new seam and part of its ceiling, and the cracked coffee pot belonged to the machine, whose remaining pot already leaked. Mara entered every amount into the green ledger. Bellwether's account would cover supplies used by its guests, but Elaine and Dean were still calculating who had taken what. The prepaid board covered some coffee, sandwiches, and firewood. The rest sat in a column labeled Storm that widened each time Mara remembered another item. "You can write one number," Ray said. "That's how numbers escape." He stood on a ladder inspecting the ceiling, while Mara positioned buckets beneath the last drips. Power had returned shortly before noon. The county road crew cleared one lane by late afternoon, and most guests had left once they confirmed their vehicles and homes were safe. Mara had slept for 20 minutes on Ruth's stool before Elaine woke her by placing a sandwich in her lap. Now, evening settled over a campground that looked as exhausted as she felt. Ray climbed down. "The old roof section needs new decking, not all of it." "How much?" "You're not going to like it. I haven't liked anything you've priced. That hurts." "How much?" he told her. Mara wrote it under Storm. "And the trailer? Dry enough if we tarp it. Not livable yet." "I can sleep in the store." "No, the floor's dry behind the counter." "No, I slept in a truck." "And threatened me with my tattoo." She capped her pen. "You have another suggestion?" "My guest room still has clean sheets and a door with a lock." Mara looked at him. "Sophia has already placed a casserole in the refrigerator," he added. "Refusal may be interpreted as an attack." 3 nights. "Fine, I pay for groceries." "You negotiate hospitality like a hostage exchange." 3 nights. Ray folded the latter. "Bring clothes that aren't full of trailer insulation." Only one plastic bin had stayed dry. Mara brought it. The first payments arrived the following morning. The woman whose husband's medication had been stored in the cooler paid for the bottled water she had taken and added $50 to the community board. The couple from Cabin 12 returned 4 flashlights, all with new batteries. An RV owner placed cash on the counter for 3 sandwiches, though Mara remembered giving him 2. Nobody wanted a receipt. Mara gave them one anyway. Frank arrived carrying lumber from his repair shop. Colleen brought 2 clients and repaired the damaged porch railing. Mason's crew replaced the roof decking at cost because Bellwether had already hired them, and Ray coordinated the work so Mara did not have to climb anything. It was not enough to erase the storm column. It was enough to keep it from swallowing the store. 3 days after the road reopened, Dean entered with Elaine and Curtis behind him. All 3 carried folders. Mara looked at the formation. "Am I being audited?" "Meeting," Dean said. "I didn't agree to a meeting. You're here. This is my workplace." "Which makes attendance easier." Elaine set a paper coffee cup in front of Mara. It was from the bakery in town, not the store. "Peace offering?" Mara asked. "I was already there." "Of course." Curtis placed the folders on the counter. "We need to settle the storm expenses." Mara opened her ledger. $912 in consumable stock, $186 in generator fuel and service, $94 for cleaning supplies, plus Bellwether will pay the full amount, Elaine said. The full amount used by Bellwether guests. The store was operating as our emergency center. It was operating as everybody's emergency center. Then call the rest a service fee. Mara looked at Dean. He opened the first folder. "We wrote a proposal." The proposal gave Bellwether a formal account with the store for guest orientation materials, arrival bundles, emergency coordination, package handling, and supplies used by campground staff. It included a fixed monthly operations payment, separate charges for inventory, and reimbursement for generator fuel during outages. The number was not extravagant. It was enough to hire help for more than 12 hours a week. Mara read every line twice. This says Bellwether can request changes to my hours. Request, Dean said. This says the store agrees to maintain adequate emergency supplies. Define adequate. We couldn't. Then don't make it a contract term. Dean made a note. This renewal provision is tied to campground occupancy. No. We thought, no. My lease and my business do not rise and fall on your bookings. Curtis nodded. Remove it. Elaine stood very still beside him. Mara turned another page. No exclusivity. If someone from the public access campground needs help, I help them too. Agreed, Elaine said. No Bellwether branding on the store. We didn't ask for that. You were going to. Elaine's mouth shifted. I considered it. My accounts remain separate. Payment in 21 days. Bellwether staff follow the same rules as everyone else when they charge supplies. Nobody sends a guest here with the words Mara will handle it. Dean wrote that down too. And if you criticize an operations decision to guests, Elaine asked, I'll try to keep it accurate. Curtis coughed into his hand. Mara closed the folder. Why are you doing this? Dean glanced toward his parents, then Deza answered himself. Because the campground doesn't work the way we thought it did. The store isn't separate from it just because the county owns the ground. People stop here first. They trust the information. During the storm, our systems went down, and yours didn't. Mine did. I had backups. Exactly. Curtis rested one hand on the counter. We have been benefiting from work we didn't count because Ruth rarely charged for it. Then we treated the place doing that work as an eyesore. Elaine looked at the ceramic loon beside the register. We called it useless, Curtis continued, and we called you worse. I went along with that because disagreeing with your mother would have required me to do more than feel privately uncomfortable. Elaine's head turned. Curtis met her look. It's true. Then he faced Mara again. I am sorry. No explanation followed. No request that she understand his position. Mara looked down at his broad hand against Ruth's scarred counter. Thank you. Elaine took the revised agreement from Dean and aligned its pages, though they were already straight. I thought Mother chose this store over me, she said. Then she chose you to run it. She asked me to help. I know, but it was easier to believe you had taken something than to admit she trusted you with something I had refused. You didn't want it. No, Elaine's voice tightened. I wanted her to want something else. Mara let the silence remain. Elaine traced a scratch in the countertop. When I saw the lease notice, I knew she hadn't canceled it. Not for certain, but I knew she probably hadn't. You still tried to buy it. I wanted the building gone before it proved I was wrong. That almost worked. Yes. It was not the full apology Mara had once imagined. Elaine did not ask to be forgiven. She did not call the disowning a misunderstanding or say grief had made everyone behave badly. She signed the proposal after Dean incorporated Mara's changes. Curtis signed beneath her. Dean signed as operations manager. Mara signed last. The payment for the storm expenses arrived that afternoon. The service agreement began the following month. Mara used the predictable income to hire Nina Shaw, a 38-year-old former Bellwether seasonal worker who had spent the previous decade managing a hardware store. Nina worked afternoons and immediately reorganized the RV fittings, so customers stopped bringing the wrong sizes to the counter. Frank kept his morning shifts and continued treating friendliness as an optional service. With 2 people on the schedule, Mara took 1 full day off each week. The first time, she woke in the trailer at 6, panicked because the store should have been open, then remembered Frank had the key. She spent the morning at Ray's house drinking coffee on the back steps, while Sophia criticized both of them for sitting in direct sun. Mara and Ray never named whatever had been rebuilding between them. He stopped leaving water bottles after she began filling her own. She stopped pretending she did not know his coffee order. Their conversations found time for things that were not broken. The trailer took 6 weeks to repair. Insurance covered the store's storm damage after the deductible, not Mara's home. She paid the trailer work in installments and slept in Ray's guest room longer than 3 nights. Nobody mentioned the hostage terms. Bellwether recovered too. Dean replaced the digital-only reservation process with a system that printed a daily occupancy list. Elaine trained staff to maintain paper backups and stopped scheduling outdoor dinners beneath questionable awnings. Curtis kept heavier gloves in his truck. The campground remained less polished than the advertisements had promised. Some cabin renovations were postponed. The heated floors never returned. Guests kept coming. When the county's next annual notice arrived, Mara paid the lease fee from the store account. The envelope no longer frightened anyone in Ruth's kitchen, because it went directly to Mara's mailbox beside the store. On the anniversary of Ruth's death, Mara unlocked the front door before sunrise. The building looked old because it was old. The porch boards did not match. The cream paint bore scuffs beneath the windows. The camp supplies sign still had a slightly crooked S. Inside, the cooler hummed quietly. Fresh maps filled the rack. The radio shelf stood ready. Green marks covered the prepaid board, and the binder had grown thick enough to require a second volume. The store paid Mara a living wage, not a fortune. Enough for groceries, repairs, health insurance, and rent on a small cottage a few miles down the road. She had signed the lease the previous week and would move after the busy season. At 5:40, Elaine's car pulled into the gravel. She opened the back door and removed a wide wooden sign wrapped in a blanket. Mara came onto the porch. "What is that?" "The original sign." Elaine unwrapped it. Bellwether Camp Store had been painted in faded blue across the wood. Beneath it, in Ruth's hand, were the words, "Ruth Bell, Proprietor." A crack ran through one corner, repaired from the back with a narrow brace. "Mason found it during the lodge work," Elaine said. "I told him to throw it away, but he didn't." "No, he put it in the maintenance barn. Apparently nobody listens to me. Hard life." Elaine looked at the sign. "I repaired the edge." Mara ran her thumb over Ruth's painted name. Together they lifted the sign above the porch. Elaine held one side, while Mara drove the screws, standing on the second ladder, rung with both feet firmly planted. When it was secure, Mara brought out a small brush, and the same blue paint she had matched in town. Beneath Ruth's name, she painted Mara Bell, Proprietor. Elaine watched without correcting the spacing. When Mara finished, the brass bell rang behind them. Frank entered and called, "Coffee first," to no one in particular. Mara looked at her mother. "Are you here to shop?" she asked, "or to talk?" Elaine considered the open door. "Both," she said, "if you'll let me." Mara turned Ruth's wooden sign to "Open, coffee first,"